the Zoom web application, as well as teleconference. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell or desk phone so that there aren't any disruptions during the meeting. During the meeting, all participants on Zoom, except for board members and the South Coast AQMD staff, will be placed on mute by the host. That means you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. This meeting is also being translated in Spanish. And to ensure that you hear this meeting in the preferred language, everyone, including board members, must select at the bottom of the screen, you go to the globe icon where it says interpretation. And from there, you can select English or Spanish. And after you select the language, if you hear both languages at the same time, please click mute original audio. If you hear everything clearly, there's no need to click the mute original audio button. Note that there's also a separate Spanish phone line available for this meeting. It has the same call-in number as this meeting, but a different ID number. The Spanish meeting ID number is 931-1258-4181. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment on the Zoom screen, please click on the raise hand button. And if you're using Zoom on your smartphone, please tap the raise hand button on the bottom of the screen. For those calling in using the phone line only, you can dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you'd like to comment. Your name will be called when it's your turn to comment, and the host will unmute your line automatically. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes for the entirety of the consent calendar plus board calendar, and 3 minutes or less for each of the other agenda items. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. Please note you can hang up and or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. As far as decorum, please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with civility, courtesy, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your microphone being muted or you being dropped from the meeting. Thank you. And with that, I turn it to you, Dr. Burke.
And I'll call to order the October 2nd, 2020 Governing Board meeting of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And I will ask, I can't see, is Councilman Buscaino with us this morning? That's why I wanted Ron to be able to group the board members so that, you know, we can see our colleagues.
Yeah, I don't see him here yet.
Yes.
I'm having difficulty here. Let me see. There's everybody.
If you click on gallery view, you should see everybody, but I don't see him.
I got everybody now.
So Ron, could you remind us how you can move tiles yourself?
Sure. So you have to make sure that you have the latest version. And if you do, you simply just move the cursor over any of the tiles and it should turn into like a little hand, and then you can move it around. You do need to make sure that let's see, that you are showing all video. So if you don't see that, you may not have the latest version, and I can work with everybody to make sure that they do get the latest version after the meeting.
Hey, Ron, so they do this in gallery view and it's basically drag and click or click and drag, right?
That's correct.
Do we have a quorum?
I don't think we do. We have 6, if I'm counting correctly.
Yeah, we only have 6.
Which seems
Oh, I see Janice Rutherford just joined.
okay.
They
There we
finally
go.
I'm here.
Now we have a quorum.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Well, we still need to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so
Okay.
I'd be happy to lead us in that, Dr. Burke.
Okay, would you, Ben?
Sure, everyone please rise. It's the flag, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Ben. And there's Supervisor Rutherford is with us. So we do have good morning. How are you?
Now we do need to do a quorum check, sir, or roll call.
Would the clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Barker, Supervisor Bartlett, Councilmember Buscaino,
Here.
Councilmember Cacciati,
Here.
Senator Delgado,
Here.
Board Member Krakoff,
Here.
Mayor McCallum, Councilmember Mitchell,
Here.
Supervisor Perez,
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Here.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Here.
Vice Chair Benoit,
Here.
and Chairman Burke.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Jeremy, I'm here.
That sounds like Larry's voice, but I can't see him. There he is. I can see him now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing that we have a quorum, are there any board member comments? Seeing none, Mr. Nastri, do you have any comments this morning?
No comments, Dr. Burke.
Wow. Okay, then we'll take the consent calendar as items 1 through 18. Is there anyone who would like to pull any item on the consent calendar?
Yes, Dr. Burke, number 18.
18.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat it?
Oh, did you say that
He
was
said
that was-
18. He said
18.
item 18.
my phone didn't catch it. So Gideon, you gotta repeat it for my phone.
Right.
Come on, Siri, get on it.
Also, Dr. Burke, if we're looking at the agenda, I don't want to speak out of order. There's a ton of people coming to speak on item 27. I don't know if there's any way that we could flip items 27 and 26 as a courtesy to the folks that are waiting for item 27.
Is 26 a long item?
Staff anticipates about 7 to 10 minutes for the presentation, Dr. Burke. That's the economic and financial outlook.
Yeah, I was asking Mr. Krakoff.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I really don't know. I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out why you flipped those two items for 7 minutes.
I don't know.
I think it also might be important to hear the economic outlook and what's going on before we take that item.
Yeah, I'm inclined to not take it out of order because we need to know what's going on financially. It's only 7 or 10 minutes.
Thank you.
I personally have heard the briefing, but I want to make sure that my colleagues have all the information before they discuss that item.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other item?
I'll just pull item number 6 for a brief comment.
Okay,
Cacciati.
Mr. Chair, this is Judy Mitchell.
yes.
On item 6, I don't have a conflict of interest or any financial interest, but I am a member of the California Air Resources Board, which is involved in that item.
Okay. Any other items on the consent calendar that either want to be pulled or any notifications that have to be acknowledged? Seeing none, I'll go to Mr. Caccioti for item number 6.
Mr. Chair, that's the school bus program, the issuance of the announcement. I just wanted to make a comment. I think you've been on the board all these years, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you because in this program, if you look at the staff report, we've replaced nearly 2,000 polluting diesel school buses with electric compressed natural gas, mostly compressed natural gas. You've retrofitted almost 3,500. You've taken 5,000 dirty, polluting, toxic buses off the streets. And again, this is millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm glad we're keeping this up. I'm excited. The question I have is just, I know now we've got the technology to have electric school buses. How do we encourage this? How do we get this word out? I read the whole report. I mean, I needed a legal team to read that report. That request for proposal is tough, Wayne. How do these school districts, how do they find out about it? Some of our board members will want to get the word out. This is a great program. I see 300 some thousand for a electric school bus, a little less for CNG or propane. Tell me a little bit about the program, how we get the word out to people, and how can we get more people to get the electric ones now that there are more companies producing electric school buses?
Thanks, Mayor. As you know, we have an extensive database. As you said, we replaced nearly 5,000 school buses, so we've had the ability to reach out to all of these school buses. And as Dr. Miyasato can explain, we send out to all of them, and he can provide greater detail. Matt?
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. So as Wayne mentioned, we do have listservs for all of the school districts within our basin. They get the notice for the solicitation once it's open today, if the board approves it. We also do outreach through all of our geo staff and through public affairs. But more importantly, we know all of the manufacturers. And so the manufacturers are quite aware of the ability to then get an incentive. And so we are in constant contact with all of the major bus manufacturers for all types A, B, and C. So once they become, and the school districts become aware that this is available, then we have no problem in oversubscribing the program 5 to 10 times over. So it's a very popular program, as you mentioned.
Matt, how many manufacturers produce electric school buses? And I've read about a couple, I think.
There's more than that. I think there's 3 to 5. The challenge that we continue to encounter is they're still about 2 to 2.5 times more expensive than natural gas or propane. So we are leaving it up to the school districts to determine whether they want to go to full electric or if they would rather stay with natural gas or even near zero propane.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Matt, thank you, Mr. Cody. Matt, who is the lady in Oakland, California, who specializes in getting electric school buses for school districts? We met her in Belgium. Remember that?
Yes, I do recall that, Dr. Burke. I was trying to recall her name. I could find that out for you, sir. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Does she ever interact with any of our acquisition programs?
I'm not certain, Dr. Burke. I know the person is familiar to us, but I'm not sure how active they've been in the past. I can get that information for you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on item 6? Then we'll put item 6 back in with items 1 through 18, and I'll take a motion.
We also had Gideon pulled item, I believe, number 18.
No, that 18. I thought that was we wanted. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 18, Mr. Krekoff.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 18 is the annual progress report for the AB 617 community emissions reduction plans. We heard this item at Stationary Source Committee with Vice Chair Benoit. And I've had the opportunity to sit in on a lot of these AB 617 steering committee meetings, particularly in the new communities, Dr. Burke in Eastern Coachella Valley, Southeast LA, which are now developing their emissions reduction plans, learning a lot about these communities and the air quality issues that affect the quality of their lives. Our staff are working very hard on the 617 program. I think we're spending like $20 million a year on this program. If you recall, 617 was part of the 2/3 vote in Sacramento, which was a deal made between the governor and the legislature to reauthorize the cap and trade program and to make sure that these communities that feel the brunt of pollution get resources to reduce emissions. Particularly, I think it's around air toxics. And another component of the deal made was for our district to transition to those barked rules, which I know we're working on by 2023. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our staff, working very hard to make 617 all it can be, to make sure that our district follows through on that 2/3 vote, that deal that created the program. And Joe Kay, Arlene, Jeanette, Dan, Gina, Evangelina, Daniel, Ryan, just to name a few. Thank you for all the meetings, the presentations, and for building the relationships of trust and candor in these communities. The newer program, there's still a lot of work to be done in implementing it and following through on the emissions reduction plans for these communities. And to say, I look forward to participating in more meetings and hearing more about the progress in our stationary source. Committee. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for your comments. Ben, is there any other?
Yes, Judith, Councilmember Mitchell has her hand raised, and we have 3 public commenters as well.
Okay. Councilwoman Mitchell?
Thank you, Chairman Burke. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some comments on the AB 617 program. This has been a program that involves a lot of collaboration with the California Air Resources Board. They are present at all of the AB 617 meetings along with our staff. What we see with AB 617 is a very effective program that zeroes in on communities that are very severely impacted by air pollution. And what we also saw with that program was that there's no sunset to it, but neither is there any consistent funding for it through legislative appropriation. So we have to pay attention to that as we devote our resources to it. But it is a really worthwhile program. I will mention that at the last meeting of CARB, we reviewed all of the programs here in Southern California in our air basin, and we have 3 of them. We reviewed those for the first time at CARB. CARB's already reviewed, and in person we went to the communities in the northern part of the state, but because of the pandemic, CARB board couldn't come down here and review all of these communities, but we did it more or less virtually. I asked CARB staff to do a video of those communities. They did a great job with aerial photos and then zooming into the specific rail yards and places that cause severe impacts. And at that meeting, we reviewed not only the community emission reduction plans, but also the implementation of those plans as it has happened so far. And then at another CARB board meeting, then we also reviewed the implementation plans for the other communities in California. I think I've mentioned what those are. There's Fresno, Shafter, West Oakland, and El Centro, Calexico on the border. So that has been a big project for both our district and for the California Air Resources Board. I want to urge all of my colleagues here on this board to attend some of the AB 617 meetings. They are on Zoom, so it's fairly easy for us to tune in. You don't have to drive all the way to San Bernardino. And of course, Janice, you live in San Bernardino, so it would be an easy trip for you. But I urge all of you to tune in and listen to some of the steering committee meetings, because they really are enlightening for all of us to hear what those communities are experiencing. And so I know Mr. Krakow has gone to some of those. I've been to as many as I can attend. And of course, our Supervisor Perez now has one of those AB 617 communities in the Coachella. So he attended one of the meetings recently. So I would urge all of us to kind of pay attention to that program, because it's become a really important part of our mission, as well as the CARB mission. So I've talked long enough, but given you my spiel, my cheerleading on that program. And so I will sign off here. Thank you, Dr. Burke.
Thank you. Let me tell you what my view is of 617. It's long overdue. The legislature, I don't think they had good intentions at heart, but if you don't keep up the funding, what are you doing here? You know, you're just telling me what I already knew, that it's horrible in some communities. I lived in one of those communities for a long time. So I know it's bad there. And what really hacks me off is the community I lived in isn't in our 617 program. And this is the largest Black community in the state of California. So I'm happy with what's being done, but the problem is so significant that it's kind of like pushing a marble up a hill. You know, it's just, you know, you can't undo decades and decades of poor attention to problems by half-stepping it. They needed to come in here. We thought, I thought, maybe I was foolish. When the cap and trade funding was announced, I thought maybe that would be the end of our economic woes, because I thought it would provide us with enough money to do the things that have been not done for decades. And as soon as the pool became significant, everybody's hand went in it, and our participation went down significantly. Of course, with cap and trade, the pool also went down. So it was. So I'm really been waiting to hear from the 617 people this morning. You know, I'm hoping that because they're hanging on. This is not a theoretical problem. This is an actual problem. So anyway, right. We are moving in the right direction, Judy. We just gotta step on the accelerator a little more and make sure the accelerator stays down. That's it. Is there anyone else? We have some public comment on this, right?
We do, but we also have Board Member Rodriguez that's raised his hand.
Okay. Board Member Rodriguez?
Thank you, Chairman Burke. Good morning.
I didn't mean
everyone.
to jump in front of you, Carlos.
No worries. Thank you. Again, I just want to echo the sentiments about the importance of the program and the significant engagement in the community. And I do appreciate the leadership of Board Member Mitchell and Carb in collaborating with us. I think now more than ever, the feedback and the input of the community is significant and important. I'm curious from staff to ensure for my edification, that the community steering committees, the CSCs, from those that are minority business owners, that are we seeing participation from them on the committees? And my dog, sorry about that, everyone. That was my question.
He doesn't like what you're saying.
I think so.
So Councilman, maybe I can speak to that, because I think that, you know, the 617 program is a program that's constantly evolving. And so where we are today, I would say, is very different than where we started. And in part, it's because when we first started, each of the districts was sort of left to its own device in terms of how to move forward. We had the example of previous work that we've done in communities, whether it was in Pacoima, whether it was in Paramount. This organization has extensive community experience that a lot don't have. But 617, what it did was it created one program across the state. And so what you find is that people started talking amongst one another. What's this community doing? What's that community doing? What's this air district doing? And so what you're finding is that time goes by, people are saying, well, hey, that district is giving a stipend. We should have a stipend. Or that district is doing this, and why aren't we doing it here? So the program is in transition. And the reason I'm telling you this is because one of the key components, and Mayor Mitchell can speak to this as well, is that when the program first came before CARB, there was a tremendous amount of people that testified about the community aspect and the residents having the say. But there was also a tremendous business representation, and said business is part of the community and business needs to be part of the steering committee. And the direction that came from CARB, as I recall, was that the majority of the CSC should be residents from the community, but that business should be involved. So that has always been the direction that we have taken and other districts has taken. But what you're seeing now is a greater insistence, I would say, by some communities that businesses don't have a voice. Well, let me restate that. They don't have a vote on matters that come before the CSC. But we've been very firm in saying that it's very clear that the CSC is made up of the majority of local residents. And so they always have the majority when it comes to a vote. But we don't think that it's appropriate for local businesses to have like a ex officio role or anything like that. So we do work very closely with all of the businesses within the communities. And we do a lot of outreach in that aspect.
So do the businesses generally have a seat at the table for a vote on the committees? To your point, Wayne, of the perception that there might be a concern, I'm particularly curious about how if you're a minority business owner, how you could be positioned to have a vote on the committees. If you don't have a vote, you don't have a voice, as we've been hearing a lot this time of year, in particular on other matters. So how would a minority business owner be able to have a seat at the table for a vote?
So it depends on how that business owner wants to have a seat. What we find in some communities is that the local chambers will be there and they'll represent the communities, the business community in that. And oftentimes that can be minority business owners. If a minority business owner wants to be on the CSC, they can also participate directly. The membership has really changed with regards to how people are brought on, right? So the reason I say that is because at the very beginning, we had about, I would say, 30 members for most of the CSCs. And what we have tried to do is really go with a consensus-based approach. So it really isn't a vote, but it's more of that consensus. But more recently, we've had larger CSCs. And I think with the larger CSCs, you've gotten some type of groups that want to be more dominant than others. And so there's been these discussions. But so far, the discussion includes business. Now, I sort of say this because right now, CARB is developing what's called the blueprint guidance. And under the blueprint guidance, that sort of establishes the framework for how these CSCs work. And there's a big discussion right now going on with regards to the role of business and participation and how consensus or how they vote or how they do things, right? All of that's up for debate. And I don't think CARB will have anything out for at least 3 months on that. We participate on both the main consultative work group as well as the subcommittees. And I'm Mayor Mitchell, if you wanted to add.
I'll just say there at the beginning of the program, a blueprint was established and approved by CARB. And that set out parameters for the operation of the AB 617 communities, including the community steering committees. Now, each steering committee is a little bit different because the community gets to decide, to a large extent how they want to formulate that committee. And as this program is evolving, as Wayne mentioned, it is evolving. And at our recent meeting to review the program, there were a number of suggestions made on how to change the blueprint, amend the blueprint. So that will be coming before CARB, these amendments. There is a community up in the Bay Area, it's the Oakland community, that has been protesting businesses having a vote on the committee. So that's one community that's kind of coming out and saying, we don't want this, but that has not been the position of CARB in general, that we think business should be at the table. They're the ones that need to be involved in reducing the emissions. So, but that is an example of where you have one community who's kind of leaning in another direction. So I will say that some of these 617 communities have faced a lot of controversy. I mean, it has not been always an easy path for them. San Joaquin Valley's communities have had a lot of dissension and conflict within their ranks. So, but all of that is just part of the steps to get through this, to try to address the issues that each community has. It often involves working with other state agencies. And I'll mention that one of the problems in the San Joaquin Valley has been the community wants more control over pesticides, at least notice of when pesticides are going to be used. And that has meant working with the ag commissioner for that area, as well as the agency, the state agency that's involved with that. That's been problematic for them, but each community is kind of unique, as you can see, and what the issues are in each community is somewhat different, and how they approach it is somewhat different. So that's what we're dealing with.
Dr. Burke?
Yes, Senator.
I guess I have a question, and maybe it's just a comment about this. I obviously think that the 617 community concept is wonderful, and I love that the community gets to be involved with creating their own plan, but hearing some of the goals that the communities have and knowing that we don't have any funding to implement it, I just worry that we're setting these communities up for frustration and a feeling of we're not doing anything to support what they want to achieve. And I don't know if there's a way to change the way we do this, where once we know how much funding we have to allocate to each community, then they get a chance to assess which project they want to do. I wonder if there's a way to right size the expectation, because as everybody noted, the legislation, the state put forward a path that's not achievable for us because we don't have.
That's exactly what I meant when I said that. Because after you've been living with this problem all your life, you know what you need. The question is, can we afford it, or can the state afford it to do it? And I think you're absolutely right about that.
So Dr. Burke, I know that Supervisor Perez wanted to speak, and maybe I could speak after.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chair and members. A lot of great conversation around this. The state of California has its challenges like all of us do. And ultimately, many times there are unfunded mandates that take place. And I think in this case here, obviously we got some funding, but nonetheless, though, not enough. And I think this gives an opportunity for us to obviously visit with our legislators and take this to the Leg Committee to come up with a plan of action, obviously, to see what we can do to ensure that we have future funding. But on another note, just going back to 617 communities, specifically in the Coachella Valley, I have had the chance to Zoom in a couple times and as well even be present in the past. And this last meeting that was held was probably the most productive meeting that we've had so far, which is good news. I know that there's been some controversy, there's been some struggle, there's been some back and forth, push and pull, and that's the way it goes, right? We're not always seeing each other from the same lens, and it's all right. It's all right, but we gotta work together and be willing to fight the good fight and know that we have to compromise. With that said, though, there was finally an approval for a charter, which is great, on a 25-2 vote. Well, it wasn't unanimous, but 25-2, it's not bad. 3 general focus areas. Salton Sea, obviously, is a major one. Illegal burning and dumping, including ag burning and pesticides, which was brought up earlier by Ms. Mitchell out in the Central Valley. Same concerns in the Eastern Coachella Valley. And better area air monitoring with specific pollutants. It was discussed around the Salton Sea, and once again, it's true. That's a longer term concern, a longer term solution, which is going to require different collaborative efforts at every level of government, right? So not only through AB 617 and AQMD, but as well the federal government, state government, regional government, locals playing a major role in that. And obviously that's a longer term solution that we all are working on, which is very, very important. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to submit a plan by December 2020. And that was brought up, and obviously we need to be mindful of that, and we got to get that plan in. It was requested by the community in order for us to meet that goal that potentially perhaps we should have 2 meetings a month for the remainder of this year to make that happen. So I just want to put in a plug for that because the community is requesting that. Unless staff feels that we can get it done with the way we are currently processing this work by December 2020, I would recommend and ask that we fulfill that request by the community of maybe having 2 meetings a month, which is their request. They're willing to work so we can get this plan together and get it done. So thank you for your time and your indulgence.
Thank you. It's really interesting. While you were speaking, I was reminded that when Ben Weso was first elected to the Senate, he called me and he said, I know I'm a senator from San Diego, but believe it or not, my district includes part of the Salton Sea. He said, I'd really like to work with you on trying to solve some of these problems at the Salton Sea. Well, he's termed out. He's on his way back down to San Diego, and we're still wrestling with these problems at the Salton Sea. So 2 meetings a month, I think, is a great idea. I'm all for that because we have to get this done hopefully in our lifetime.
Hopefully lifetime, that's correct.
So Dr. Burke, we're committed to making sure that we meet the requirements. And if it means that we've got to have 2 meetings a month, that's something that we discuss. We're certainly on board on that for October. We want to see where we are as we're getting close because we've got to be able to bring this back to committee in November so that we can bring it back in December before the full board. So we're doing everything that we can. Supervisor, appreciate all the help that you've provided. Along with reaching out to Assembly members, Christina and Eduardo Garcia, having them keep track and provide us with guidance and inspiration for us to continue fighting the good fight. So we're all moving forward. Thank you, Supervisor.
Councilmember Mitchell's raised your hand now. Judith?
Thank you. I wanted to say something about the overall program. Because I mentioned that one of the original communities was El Centro. And that's the Coachella, not Coachella, but it's Salton Sea involved as well, and that's where San Diego comes into play. But now a newer community, and we had 3 communities in Southern California on the first year, 4 communities in Northern California for first year. Then, as you recall, we approved 2 more communities in our area for the second year. And the Coachella Valley, where Supervisor Perez is located, is that second year community. And Southeast LA is an approved second year community that we are working with now too. Those 2 communities have to produce community emission reduction plans by December. You've already approved the first year community emission reduction plans. That's what we've just done recently. And before you today will be the proposal for yet another community. This will be a 3rd year 617 community in our area, and that is in South Los Angeles. So you can see that South Coast Air District has more communities than any other air district in the state. Of course, we have a lot more problems, but we will have, at the end of this year, we will have the 3 original first year communities, 2 second year communities, and now in the 3rd year, 1 more community. So our staff is really burdened with a lot of work, and but it's a great program. And I know this year, because we have a state budget that's what, 54 some billion, and not 54 billion, what is it? It's a huge amount of debt. And so we don't expect to get a lot of money this year. And also the cap and trade monies are down too. The auctions haven't produced very much money, but we can work with what we've got, and we can work with other monies that we already get from Carl Moyer and other sources to direct those toward our impacted communities. So there's still some money there to work with, some things that we can accomplish even with lower funding. And we expect that funding to rise back up as the economy recovers.
Okay. Have we got anybody else's hand up, Ben?
No, I think that's it. Other than we have a public comment, I believe, on the entirety of the consent calendar. So if we want to wrap this item back into the consent calendar,
Yeah,
unless someone has
yeah,
an objection.
Right. And why don't we take the public comment on the consent calendar?
Very good. First up is Harvey Etter. Go ahead, Harvey.
Hello. Hi, I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition and all like-minded folks for our goals. First of all, I want to protest. Oh, you're getting only 3 minutes on the whole consent calendar. In terms of that 617 discussion, we attended a bunch of these meetings down here. Got some encouragement about starting these co-ops for solar big trucks and whatnot, going out to from the ports to the areas where they're shipped around the country and whatnot, warehouses. Okay. Big problems. First of all, we got to have 3 minutes on each thing. That's the law. We're litigating with you. That's part of what we're litigating. You're purging public. That's what you've done to us, okay? We talked with environmental, okay, your whole plan and going out to Coachella is illegal. You had Fine and Burke talking again. You wanted to use COVID numbers for reductions. You omitted anything about the fire, as did incorporating by reference everything I said to CARB yesterday and recently, and all of the meetings and conversations with staff with CARB and with EPA, talking to this guy Kelly the other day. Then he said, John Avarsky, and he said that stuff we put into the record in September of last year, okay, in litigation with you folks, EPA, and then he tried to get a copy of that. And he said he would not send a copy of that, even if we paid for it, but he would send everything back. And this was confirmed again 2 days ago by Mr. Kelly and his superiors in the air section of EPA. This is garbage. We're incorporating by reference the Times and LA and all the major papers and quoting the governor saying this is a damn climate Armageddon, and also that we're hitting conditions that we weren't supposed to get till 2040, 2050, and that everything the state's doing is inadequate and doesn't make it. Well, what we're doing, the 100 exhibits that you all ignored and purged and continue to purge with backing up from the state police, from the federal marshal and the FBI that ran us out of court, not letting us file papers, not letting us petition the government. This is outrageous. And after getting slammed $100 trillion and a shout out to Portland to the same police, the same federal marshals for taking out the guy that who shot him 10 times after the Antifa guy, and said Antifa and the left. This is garbage, man. This guy's got the virus now. He might have given it to Biden. We got real problems now, real structural problems. And this whole virus thing is a pandemic, and it's climate. And it's.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Who's next, Ben?
Sure, I have a call-in user 1. Someone on the phone, a call-in user?
Yes, this is Ranji George. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, Ranji, go ahead.
Right. Thank you. Good morning, board members. And I'd like to talk on item number 6. Dr. Burke, you had initiated the school bus program, I believe, in around 2000, and I want to thank you for that. That was your vision, and I had the great honor of implementing that vision of replacing all the dirty school buses in the region. I was very ably supported by my superiors. I want to thank them too, Fred and others. The question I have is, when we started off, there were about 55 school districts, and they were very much opposed to the school bus rule and the acceptance of natural gas vehicles. They were very upset and agitated throughout the districts, except for a few handful who supported it. So I personally, when I joined, I went to every school district, called them up, visited their facilities, talked to the technicians, talked to staff, and invited us. We gave them the individual touch. And within 3 or 4 years, almost every school district were on board. Everyone, about 3 or 4 years, 53 out of 55 school districts. And just remember, ladies and gentlemen, there were 10,000 school buses at that time in the region, about 55% owned by private contractors and 45% by the school districts themselves. So we had the great honor of bringing all on board, and I worked with the vendors. The reason I bring this up is we negotiated prices on the natural gas school buses. The ARB had a very high ceiling, but we went from $250 asking price to about $170,000 or so, and all the vendors cooperated. We had endless negotiations back and forth, but they did come through, and I showed them how to make a profit at the lower prices. We saved so much money. We plowed that money back into the program. And then now the same thing should be done for electric school buses. Giving $400,000 is almost like going on a helicopter and showering money at the vendors, when the vendors can easily bring that price to $325,000, because that was the price quoted at for me in 2015, just a couple of years before my retirement. So I urge the staff to negotiate, do a better negotiation, save the program some money, and add more buses to the program. So I urge Dr. Berg to let them know not to simply give in to the big price tags they are asking. They can do a very good job. They are very good entrepreneurs, and they worked with us. So again, I want to thank Dr. Burke for his vision and for the board members' support of the school bus program. It has been a very successful, one of the best in the country, and I'm glad it is continuing to roll. But I urge you for greater negotiations. I hope you will. Thank you. I hope this follows.
Thank you, Ranji. Our next speaker is Angie B.
Before she speaks.
Yes.
I would like to remind, most of our board members weren't here. But when we started the school bus program, school buses that were being utilized to transport children had more fumes inside the school bus than was located at the tailpipe. Now, when you stop to think about that, it seems almost impossible that it can be more polluted inside the school bus than at the end of the tailpipe. But what was happening was it was accumulating inside the school bus. And just think of the years and the years of children who are subjected to that. Just amazing. I'm glad we're finding our way out of it. Who's our next speaker?
Angie B. Angie?
All right, good morning, board. My name is Angie Balderas. I am resident of San Bernardino, Highland area. I've been in this inland region for over almost 3 decades now. And I am an organizer, national organizer with the Sierra Club. And also I am the AB 617 San Bernardino and Muscoy community member and host. Our communities and partners are beyond actively involved and engaged in AB 617. And this community engagement is not only vital, but should have the experts who are the community on the ground to be part of this process. That I strongly believe. Sorry about that. To fulfill the promise of AB 617, we need to pass strong rules in the coming months: warehouse, rail yard, ISRs, reclaimed transition, landing rules, and so forth. Without good rules, the community-driven documents will just gather dust. And I hope we could count on the board to be advocates for this. We do not need to be cutting such programs as AB 617, but we need to expand them. Our communities are beyond impacted. And I also, we need to keep in mind that some of our community, before COVID, were able to, when they could, found a way to go and do testimony. And now that it's virtually, we have community here in our areas who don't even have internet, but find some way to make it to the AB 617 community meetings. So I encourage our leaders, our local leaders like Larry McCollin and Janice Rutherford to join us. I know, Janice, you have sent a staff member, but I would like to invite you, and as the host, I would love to see you be part of the AB 617 for the San Bernardino and Muscoy, and for you to join us and hear community out, and especially the community of San Bernardino and Muscoy, who's the heavily impacted community by rail yards, warehouses, and all sorts of polluters. Thank you for your time. And please, please be champions and advocates of AB 617. We do not need to cut this. We need to expand this. And if we're gonna say we're here for community, let's not talk about it, but be about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is it okay for me to make a quick comment?
Of course.
I was just going to say that for those who are supportive of AB 617, as the last speaker clearly was alluding to funding cuts and whatnot, I would urge all those who are concerned about that to turn their focus to the state legislature, those who are state senators and state assembly members that represent them, to express those concerns, because they are the ones ultimately who are going to have the purse strings to fund the program. We're the implementers. So we can't implement without funding. And my puppy would be really upset if I didn't mention that. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No problem. And they really need to be reminded, don't talk about it, do it, So yeah, that's an excellent suggestion.
I have 3 more speakers.
Public testimony, Ben?
No, I have 3 more.
Dr. Could I just make a quick comment? I wanted to thank Angie for coming. Angie has been a really good facilitator of the community steering committee out in San Bernardino. Thanks for coming today and speaking up. And just to remind our board members that the AB 617 program is a combination of regulatory measures and incentive measures. So we're going to be the ones responsible for regulatory measures. So, and that's what Angie was alluding to. So as those measures come before us, we should keep in mind the AB 617 communities and their needs. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ben?
Yep, our next speaker, Yasi.
Morning, everybody. This is Yasi Kawazade. I'm also an organizing representative with Sierra Club. I live in the inland region of the city of Riverside. I'm also here today to just echo what my colleague Angie explained earlier. At the Sierra Club, we really are taking a back seat on AB 617 and being guided by our community partners that are active with the environmental justice movements in our communities that have been historically active. So hearing how much progress and how many reports and all the work that staff accomplishes is, I just be thankful and grateful for all the work y'all. And we need your advocacy and your lead. This board needs to advocate this that is intended to create a broader vision, community engagement, and implementation of not only and science, implementation of the rules and regulations to get us toward a cleaner future, to get us towards the progress for California, continue its leadership in solving the air pollution crisis that we have today. Our communities in the inland region are being basically pinpointed and darted for expansion of warehouses and rail yards, and there's no end to it. We see that goods movement is essential and it's not going anywhere and it's growing. Changing the business model to shift towards clean zero implementations for air pollution reductions is essential here, and AB 617 cannot to its expectations without the proper rulemaking. We have some volunteers that are going to be joining us during their lunch breaks later on today to speak on that. But we're watching this closely, and we hope that we can count on your leadership, continue advocating for rulemaking and the support that AB 617 needs to achieve in its intentional vision. So just wanted to thank Judy Mitchell, Councilmember Judy Mitchell, for your leadership and for the compliment that you gave Angie. She told me to thank you. And all the staff that's been able to continue our progress for this. And we hope to see more board members attend meetings and be engaged.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next up, we have Emily Spokes. Emily?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Spokes with the NELA Climate Collective. Just real quick, I wanted to reiterate something I've said before. If it's possible for you guys, we do this in the neighborhood council, for somebody to be able to put the agenda items up at the same time so that other speakers aren't confused if they have to come out late. Shout out to all the parents like me who are trying to manage 15 things at once. So it would be really awesome if you guys could do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. What did you say?
I was saying if you guys could if someone could share a screen with the agenda item so that we could make sure we're commenting on the correct agenda item. Assuming this is number 6, that's when I wanted to go. But as a parent who's trying to manage homeschool, it's difficult to drop in and out and know kind of where we are. So it's just some feedback as parent, and shout out to all the other parents. Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you all so much for the school bus, the lower emission school bus program. And it's super important. I just wanted to say the new alternative fuel is not good enough. We need zero emissions buses. New alternative fuel could still, based on what it is, it's going to be phased out anyways. And it just feels, it feels like a patchwork when we have the opportunity to go straight electric. So thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all well.
Thank you very much. Good suggestion. Adrian Martinez.
Good morning, Chair Burke and members of the board. My name is Adrian Martinez, and I'm an attorney with Earth Justice. I just wanted to comment on 2 items. Like Yasi, Earth Justice has really taken a backseat on the 617 process and let community groups participate and lead in that. But we do want to highlight the 2 regulations on warehouses and rail yards that are forthcoming. Just yesterday, Marketplace ran a story about how warehouses are making more money than they've made in many years in Southern California. And even as this is happening, that means that there are more impacts on local communities where these warehouses are located. This is a good time to really push these warehouses and rail yards to clean up their pollution. And I think it's an important complement to the efforts of the AB 617 and important parts of the emissions reduction plan. And then the second item I wanted to flag was item number 6, which is on the lower emission school bus program. First of all, really want to thank the district for really pioneering these efforts to clean up school buses. These are really important sources of pollution to clean up. I do want to flag, we do recommend that more, if not all, of the program go towards zero emission school buses. And we encourage the Air District staff to look at other programs throughout the nation where we're seeing larger deployments of electric school buses for much fewer dollars. So for example, Dominion Energy in Virginia is working with school districts to deploy 1,000 electric school buses over the next 5 years. And through kind of added benefits from the school buses, including grid resiliency. So a lot of these school buses are equipped with vehicle to grid integration, which means if we are having energy problems, you can use this as a resource to help keep the lights on for people. And so I think really kind of focusing in on that and trying to figure out how can we stretch these dollars, I think will be very important. And I encourage staff to work with the California Energy Commission, which is really focused on electric school buses and trying to help schools get the infrastructure needed. And with the passage of AB 841, which is going to spur a lot of investments in schools over the coming years, I think this is a good complementary program to really focus on improving our schools and electrifying their fleet. Thank you.
Mr. Gilchrist, do we still have a quorum?
I believe so, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to do a quick count. Yes, we do. I think it's just that not everybody's visible.
Okay.
All right, we have 3 more speakers. Next up, I have Ruth Andre Scope. Go ahead, Ruth.
¿Aló? Hola,
Yep.
muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Ru Andrade y soy organizadora de SCO del sur de Los Ángeles. Buenos días, Distrito de Manejo del Área de Costa del Sur. Vivo pues en el sur de Los Ángeles y hoy estoy aquí preocupada, ¿verdad?, con la contaminación del aire. Soy parte del sur de Los Ángeles, Push LA, embajadora del aire calidad académico. Estoy aquí porque la comunidad sur de Los Ángeles no ha sido seleccionada para un plan AB617 y nuestra comunidad está lista para comenzar a implementar soluciones para reducir la contaminación del aire. Pedimos que AQMD escuche a nuestras comunidades que han sido descuidadas durante demasiado tiempo. Participé en la Academia de Calidad del Aire, Push, porque me preocupa por mejorar la calidad del aire a mi comunidad. Sabemos de que las explosiones han contaminado al aire, está relacionado con la mortalidad, ¿verdad?, infantil, el asma y los impactos adversos para la salud. Los receptores sensibles como las comunidades de color y de bajos recursos, los niños, las mujeres embarazadas y las personas mayores tienen mayor riesgo a exposición a largo plazo a la contaminación del aire. En 2010, el área sur de Los Ángeles obtuvo una de las tasas de hospitalización y visitas de emergencia por asma y altas del condado. Una de las cosas, ¿verdad?, pues yo cada día que uno respira y mi familia, ¿verdad?, yo tengo alergias, igual mi familia, que todos los días en las mañanas, de hecho, igual ahorita estoy un poquito ronca, ¿verdad? Porque tengo, en mi comunidad hay 3 pozos de petróleo muy cerca. Siempre lo he mencionado y Alenco, lo que es Jefferson en Brooklyn y lo que es Marfin. Son 3 pozos de petróleo, ¿verdad? Que los tenemos muy cerca y siempre hemos dicho que se reduzca más que todo a 2.500 pies de distancia, ¿verdad? Porque es algo que nos afecta día a día y no nada más, pues se han hecho estudios, ¿verdad? Hay datos, porque hemos hecho encuestas, ¿verdad? ¿Cuál es el motivo? Y necesitamos que nos den ese cambio también. Pues nuestra comunidad está, ¿verdad? Más que todo preocupada por el sur de Los Ángeles, está quedando fuera del programa de protección del aire de AQMD. Necesitamos asegurar que ustedes nos aseguren que nuestra comunidad sean seleccionadas para un plan de AB617 de mejorar del aire del sur de Los Ángeles. Ha sido ignorado durante mucho tiempo, como lo dije, y merece esta oportunidad para mejorar esa calidad del aire y abordar el legado de contaminación de perforaciones petroleras, talleres de carrocerías, tintorerías, instalaciones de metales. Nuestra comunidad quiere mejorar inversiones reales en producción limpia y soluciones reales para que garanticen la protección de la salud y el bienestar de nuestra familia y comunidades. Nuestra visión es en el sur de Los Ángeles más justa y saludable y pueda lograr mediante un aire limpio, más limpio, una transición justa de industrias responsabilizando a las agencias y proveyendo coleccionalmente una visión para el sur de Los Ángeles fuerte y saludable. Muchísimas gracias.
Mr. Vice Chair, I just want to note that I believe those comments were targeted toward item number 27. And perhaps people should be reminded that these are the consent items 1 through 18.
Very good. Thank you. We do have 3 more speakers in the queue. Well, actually, one is Harvey Etter. Harvey, I'm sorry, I already spoke to the consent calendar. We'll have an opportunity to speak again a couple of items later. Our next speaker is Todd Campbell. Todd, and if you could please keep your comments to the consent calendar, item 1 through 18.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay, great. Good morning. Thank you, members of the board, for your continued service. I wanted to speak to the 617 as well as the lower emission school bus program. And Dr. Burke, thank you for bringing me back in memory lane. I remember riding, failing the grade and no breathing in the aisles with when I worked for the Coalition for Clean Air and the Natural Resource Defense Council, and remember being amazed that when we rolled up those windows in the school bus that we actually found, you know, significant emissions coming into the cabin of the school bus. That was something that we did not expect, but you know, our monitors clearly picked up, and you know, really kind of highlighted the reason why we need to protect, you know, some of our most vulnerable populations, such as children. I think if I remember right, the toxicity levels were 86 times above what EPA deemed as acceptable risk, and that's 86 times too much. I just wanted to touch on a couple of comments that were made regarding these items. I clearly support representing clean energy, support us moving forward with mobile source rules or indirect source rules that could, you know, obviously advance and accelerate the transition away from diesel, which we know is significantly harmful to the South Coast Air Basin and many other parts of the state. I think that we need a multi-pronged approach. While I think all of us would appreciate moving to zero now, I think the reality of doing so is pretty daunting. And I would, you know, for example, call into question, for example, the most recent executive order that was issued by the governor, you know, to move to, you know, all electric sales by 2035. If we were to be on target in the next 5 years of that goal, we'd have to invest about $15 to $30 billion in the first 5 years, and that doesn't even touch upon the infrastructure needs that we would need to get to. So, you know, I just want to caution and say, you know, as we plan to meet clean air, and I hope we achieve clean air by 2023 and 2031, we have to look at other strategies that are near zero, that provide support for low NOx engines that run on renewable fuels that are low in carbon, as well as hydroelectric, plug-in hydroelectric, fuel cell, and zero. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Chavez. Chris?
Yes, good morning, board members. This is Chris Chavez. I'm the Deputy Policy Director for Coalition for Clean Air, as well as a member of the Wilmington, Carson, and West Long Beach Community Steering Committee for the 617 process. My comment is specific to item 18 related to 617. And I just want to make a couple quick comments. One is that certainly, you know, I appreciate and understand the concern and the need about additional funding for the program from the legislature. And from Coalition for Clean Air's perspective, we wholeheartedly agree that funding is needed, and the state legislature does need to step up and support this program. I would recommend or advise that we need to be able to show and demonstrate the successes of the 617 program to the legislature to show that it is worth funding, and that we need to show that this is actually resulting in tangible changes and results in the community. And I think one of the key ways to do that is showing the changes and the increases of rulemaking and enforcement in that community, that these communities do have stronger rules supporting them, stronger rules resulting in emission reductions for those impacted areas. I'd also like to suggest that we need to consider how to clamp down on on entities that are not moving forward or not giving their fullest effort into AB 617. Again, the ports have long been slow walking the process of developing the MOU with the agency, with AQMD, and we are now going on to almost a year in which there was last any significant updates to that MOU. And again, I would encourage, and based off the comments at the most recent Air Resources Board meeting, which they considered the local SERPs, that the board should potentially consider the adoption of an ISR if the ports continue to slow walk the development of a rule for that for themselves. So certainly want to make sure that as we do acknowledge and recognize we need additional funding for this program's success, we also need to demonstrate the success that has happened and what will happen through 617. I do want to commend the hard work that the staff and the board members who participated in the process, and recognize that, you know, a lot of effort has gone into it, but that effort should shine through as the district and the advocates involved with this process make the case to the legislature. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
All right, I have two more speakers in the queue. Katie Covell. Katie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Katie Covell. I'm a mom and member of NELA Climate Collective. And I just want to say that I support the zero emissions buses. And I also want to echo what others have said, that they should be zero emissions because the new alternative fuel isn't good enough and we need clean energy now. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Martha Dina Aguro. Martha?
Good morning, everyone. I am also having quite a flashback. My first time testifying before this board was on the Clean Bus Rule, along with Todd and many others who fought to make that happen. And I just want to reiterate the need to move to zero quickly. The impacts on our community right now are catastrophic and difficult, and we're going to have to be bold in moving to zero emission. It is one of the only solutions for many of our communities that are crisscrossed by freeways and live next to heavy traffic roadways, and we know the profound health impacts of that. So by attacking the air pollution problem, and moving quickly. It may be difficult, but how much more difficult than the experience that our communities are having now, dealing with the multiple crises of air pollution, of COVID, and climate, and fires, and those are going to only escalate. It's time to move to zero emission vehicles and be aggressive about it. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done, both on 617, but over my 20-year career at PSR, to see that when we first started talking about zero emission, it was unheard of, and now it's a reality, and we need you to help make that a reality and keep fighting for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Burke, that's our last commenter. I'll go ahead and move items 1 through 18.
I'll second it.
Did I get a second?
Second from Cacchiotti, but let staff know, I know in item 5, there's three vehicles being purchased. I hope they're electric. Thank you. I thought you tried to get it by me.
You have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Barker,
Aye.
Supervisor Bartlett, Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Buscaino.
I believe you had to step away.
Thank you. Councilmember Cacchiotti,
Yes.
Senator Delgado, Senator Delgado, Board Member Krakoff,
Yes.
Mayor McCallan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Benoit,
Yes.
and Chairman Burke.
Yes.
Okay, Supervisor Barger is also on.
Yes, I did get her as a yes.
Yeah, I said yes.
Thank you. Motion
Thank you.
Motion passes 9-0 with 3 absent.
Okay. Are there any questions on items 22, 25? 25. If I get a motion on those items,
Move approval.
I'll second it, Barker.
would the
Dr.
clerk
Burke,
call the
I
roll?
do have Harvey Eder in the queue, but Gideon, can you remind me that that's part of the consent calendar that we spoke to earlier, or?
That's correct.
All right. That's all I have in the queue.
Okay. Would the clerk call the roll on those items?
Supervisor Barker,
Aye.
Supervisor Bartlett, Councilmember Buscaino, Councilmember Cacchiotti,
Yes.
Senator Delgado, Board Member Krakoff,
Yes.
Mayor McCallan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Benoit,
Yes.
and Chairman Burke.
Yes. And did you get Senator Delgado's vote? Because her microphone's muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. And motion passes 10-0 with 2 absent. Or I'm sorry, 11-0 with 2 absent. Thank you.
Okay. Jill, item 26.
Good morning, Dr. Burke and members of the board. I'm Jill Wynot, Chief Operating Officer, and I'm providing the 4th of our monthly updates to the board on our budget and economic outlook. Can we go to slide 2, please? A little bit different because of the timing. Today's board meeting is the 2nd of the month. We're going to provide much of the data through September 25th. And then next week at the administrative committee, we'll be able to give you the full month for a lot of this data. So can we go next to slide 3? So we'll focus on the top half of this chart for this slide and the next one, comparing month to month. One of the things we've been tracking is the refinery throughput. August looks a little unusual. August of 2019 was one of the largest numbers we've seen. The typical range that we've been tracking the last 4 months has been in the 40s. August 2020 is pretty typical for what we've seen recently. It's running between 32 and 42. And I don't have a reason why August 2019 was so high. Similarly for the ports, we're seeing the second month in a row with increases this year in August compared to last year. And this was the highest August ever recorded at the Port of LA. So I know we heard last month that this may be due to just restocking, but it looks like the ports are doing well. Unemployment is also continuing to steadily improve. When we reported first in April, we were 15.5%, and we're now about 11.6. So we're seeing some things moving in a positive direction. Slide 4, please. The national gross domestic product for the second quarter, January through August, really very little change from last time. It is down from the same period last year, about 9%. The year to date so far for the refinery activity, we're down about 18%, and that's consistent with what we've seen over the last 3 months or so. Similarly, the ports are down about 8%. That's actually an improvement over what we've seen over a couple months ago. So the ports are doing a little bit better. Next, I'd like to turn to revenue, slide 5. So just to remind you of the color schemes, the blue lines on several of these charts are fiscal year 18-19. Orange is fiscal year 19-20, and our current fiscal year 2021 is sort of the gray. So we have 3 data points so far this fiscal year. Our revenue is actually tracking fairly closely the last 2 months. So we're seeing a similar trend, and we'll keep a close eye on this as well. Slide 6, please. For the expenditures, we talked last month. This chart is a little bit more variation, and it has mostly to do with the timing of the pay periods. But we're trying to keep our expenditures down wherever possible. And you could see that for August and September, we're tracking fairly closely to the previous fiscal year. Slide 7, please. So our staffing levels were similar to last month's vacancy rate. We're a little over 16% vacancy, which really is too high. We're going to try to do our best to fill just a few critical positions here and there, and try not to go much higher than 16%. Last month, there was an SB-SARA decision that said it was no longer legal, or it was not legal to consider the third-party payments to insurance as part of compensation for employees that were hired before 2013. There's another potential SB-SARA action. They're considering and analyzing information on the other part of the monthly amount that goes to employees for their health insurance coverage. If this is taken away, it has very significant impacts for a lot of our executives, management, and all staff. But at this point, we don't know what that decision will be. We are responding back to SB-SARA today, and we'll provide some information that they asked for, and we'll watch this closely. The earliest this would be decided would be at their November meeting, or perhaps December. But we are seeing a great deal of angst from a lot of our staff, and this may result in several dozen people retiring more abruptly than they would. So it's going to put a real strain on our succession planning and our resource efforts. So this is an area that we're really watching closely and concerned
So
about.
does that mean that those people would have to retire in October?
The date that this would be effective, if it goes this way, is to be determined. It may be the date that the board, the SB-SARA board, makes the decision. There is a small possibility that they could make it retroactive, but we will find out in advance what the staff analysis looks like before it goes to the SB-SARA board. They committed to giving us that information. So at that time, we will have a better sense of what direction this is going and if there's a staff recommendation on an effective date.
And when would you get that information?
They did not commit to us how far in advance. They just said in advance. So we need to work closely with the SB-SARA staff and get information as soon as possible.
My understanding is that it could cause over 200 people to retire.
There are 400 employees total that are affected by this potentially. Many of them, it's a much smaller dollar amount, and they have more years to plan. I'm looking at possibly, my best guess is 30 to 70 or so employees that have more than 30 years with a significant potential impact financially of this. So it's really hard to tell. It's making a lot of people nervous about what's next. So a lot of people are crunching numbers and trying to get things lined up just in case they have to go quickly.
Hate to see those people leave, but in case they do, what are we doing to anticipate filling their spots?
We're starting to look into open recruitments for a lot of the entry-level positions for inspectors, chemists, engineers, et cetera, so that we will have lists available. We are working with our teams through succession planning to document procedures, to mentor people, to try and bring people up. But there's a few key executive level and management level positions where Wayne and I have been talking about, what can we do in the short term if we only have a month or two? And we're talking about things like shadowing people in positions and just making sure that we can react as quickly and deftly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's go to slide 8 and look at emission trends. This is sort of a good surrogate for our annual emissions, which is about a $20 million a year revenue stream. The tracking for these large sources at reclaim facilities is continuous emissions. We're down a little bit still from August to August of last year. September is not available yet, but it looks like the gap is beginning to close a little bit. So we'll have to keep an eye on this to see which direction it's going to go. I want to turn next to slide 9 on permit trends. Okay, thank you. The number of applications received per month for September, so far on the 25th, we had 590, have another 5 or so days to go in the month. So that number may edge closer to the 700. So we'll report that at the admin committee and see, but it looks like it might be a little bit closer of a gap as well. Slide 10, please. The permit revenue, you can see the 3 data points in gray on the left-hand side here for July through September. They're trending lower. Permit revenue is another $20 million a year revenue stream. So this looks like about a $4 million less if this trend continues. This tends to lag behind the incoming permits because we recognize the revenue when the action is taken. But this area is a potential concern. Slide 11. The annual operating fee, which is closer to $60 million a year, is actually tracking pretty closely. And while August was a little low, September is looking like it's making up for that difference. So this large revenue source looks like it's tracking pretty well. Can we just go to fee review committee, please, on slide 12? I'm happy to report that the last 3 months, the number of businesses that are coming to request a payment plan from the fee review committee look like they're getting closer to typical background normal levels. So again, we'll keep an eye on this, and we're working with all these companies very closely to see if we can help them with those payment plans. Slide 13, please. Now, the expired permits by month, initial reaction, the September potential number looks a little high. It's the highest number we've had so far, 529. But I want to point out that in July and August, we had very high numbers as well. August was 390, and July was initially 468. So we're seeing that a lot of companies just need another 30 or 60 days to make these payments, and then they come down. The other interesting thing is, out of the 529 potentially expiring permits, 150 of them are one company that does asbestos abatement And then there are 2 other companies that are each 20 to 25. So there's about 10 or 11 companies here that make up about 280 of the 529. And then the rest are smaller miscellaneous companies. So we are working with these companies. We're reaching out to them. We're working with them to see if they can get a payment plan, and we can expedite those payment plans just in a matter of a couple of days if it's less than $10,000. So this is, again, something to keep an eye on. Slide 14, please. The last metric is the number of CEQA documents that are sent to South Coast for our staff review. September was actually pretty close this year compared to September of last year. So that looks like it may be improving, but again, that's just a snapshot. Okay, the next 2 slides are the same summary slides that are at the beginning of the presentation, just again to consolidate all the information in one point. So that concludes the presentation, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Hi, Jill. This is Councilmember Rodriguez. Curious, in the admin committee, was there any conversation about the 500 plus number on slide 13, I believe, as to whether there's a need to entertain any flexibility on regarding timing?
When we talked to the admin committee, we did not have the September numbers. So the admin committee was looking at the previous number, which was for August and July, which were closer to 400. There was some discussion. We talked a lot about the fact that South Coast AQMD does more in this area for businesses than any other air district. We send our invoices out with more advance notice. We do more outreach and notification to the companies, and we provide these payment plans. We talked about an example for a small auto body facility. Their initial permit is about $1,475 a month. Their annual renewal fees are just over $420. And then if they don't pay that on time, the maximum late penalty is $200. So to reinstate their permit, it's about $620, and we can easily give them a payment plan to extend that over a 6-month period. So there are a lot of things we can do. We make several phone calls to each of the facilities. We send a certified return receipt mail. So they all have a lot of advance notice. And the majority of the permits are paid the first 30 to 60 days. And then there's kind of a drop off, and then there's a group at the end that pays, kind of at the last minute. There's also a tendency for some natural attrition of permits. Businesses change their processes, they modernize their equipment, so they no longer need the permit, and some businesses go out of business as well. So there was a discussion at the admin committee, and I'll let board members comment as they would like to.
Any other comments or questions? I have Harvey Etter in the queue. Mr. Etter, go ahead. Harvey, go ahead. I think he muted himself again. Harvey, you were unmuted. Oh, there you go. Mr. Etter? Mr. Etter, you appear to be unmuted. Maybe your phone is muted locally.
Should we go to Mr. George and then come back?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Harvey, maybe try reconnecting. We heard you unmuting and muting, but we're going to go to Ranji George and maybe try reconnecting, Harvey. Ranji, go ahead. Ranji George.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning, board members. I'm an ex-employee of AQMD. I have a little concern on the SB Sarah decision. The last month meeting, I had mentioned about the Alameda decision, and I think it was Supervisor Jan Refford who mentioned that Alameda decision is the law of the land. I fully agree with that. I, in fact, called it the Fifth Symphony, the way they wrote that opinion. It was trying to be truthful. It's trying to cover a broad range, and it was 82 pages long, but it was because to cover every aspect of what went into the decision. I'm not disagreeing with the decision. In fact, I'm upholding it. But what I want to bring to your attention, board members, is the interpretation of that decision. It's seriously flawed. What the lawyers at SPERA and at maybe AQMD is interpreting. There is no provision in that decision, a very fine decision, to say that the wages that employee or managers have been earning for last 20, 30 years, those will be affected. It's only the last 12 months on which the retirement package is calculated. When an employee or a manager spikes it, that's when it is affected. Just the last 12 months where if something irregular happens, because we know in Bell Gardens or some cities, some managers gave themselves $400,000. They pumped the wages so high so that they can, retire comfortably. But the health premiums is part of the regular compensation. So number two part of the regular compensation. So, and an individual employee doesn't have any influence on that particular portion of that compensation. So, and the Alameda decision left that intact. In fact, they said there is a boundary wall on which the decision doesn't cross, and that boundary wall was the existing ongoing compensation which attracts employees from outside. Now, if there's a big vacancy and if they say the health premiums will not be covered, you will have a hard time attracting qualified people. There are wonderful people in the AQMD. You should honor their commitment to their work by challenging this rubbish interpretation of the Alameda decision. I think what they were focusing strictly was the last 12 months of the package. So I urge you, individual board, exercise your conscience, read the decision, the 82-page, and make your independent decision on this. So just my thoughts on that. Please help our employees. They helped us brought this whole air district into compliance. I mean, from 300 days to 30 days, they did a marvelous job working. I had a great honor of working.
Thank you, Ranji. Harvey Eder, we'll try you again. Harvey? Oh. I see Mr. Eder's hand went down. Do we want to try unmuting him one more time? Harvey, if you could try unmuting again.
Can I ask Bay while you're trying to do that? Bay, what is the district doing to get a clear understanding of that ruling, as Mr. George was saying?
Yeah, but I won't go into possibly privileged information, but I can say we've retained outside counsel, and
we're helping.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I wanted to know.
Oh, okay. I was about to go on for a while. Okay, I'll stop.
Okay, and Councilman Buscaino has rejoined us. Looks like the Lone Ranger there. Oh, no, the Lone Ranger had the mask up above. Can you hear us, Buscaino? No, he's just riding along.
He had a press conference with I believe his police chief he had to go to. He let us know.
Right, and there's been another incident since he was in the board meeting here. So it's really bad. Okay, thank you, Jill. Is there any more questions for Jill? I think that you know, I don't want to be Rosie the Riveter, but I think that it's looking okay. You know, so far so good. Pray for no rain. You know, it's going to be tight for the next year or so, but it's not going to be catastrophic so far, because it could have been catastrophic. Now, what bothers me is, you know, the next item we're going to hear is 617, and they need money. Now, there's no money in that budget that Jill's got, so we gotta kind of scratch our head and find out what to do here. Item 27.
Hi, good morning, Dr. Burke and members of the board. My name is Jo K. Gosh, and I'm the Director of Community Air Programs and Health Effects Officer. I'll be presenting the recommendation for the Year 3 implementation of AB 617. Next slide, please. We already heard a little bit about AB 617 this morning, so I won't go into great detail here, but this began in 2017. It is a statewide program that includes several components that several board members have already mentioned, including the BART requirements, some emissions reporting changes, and what I'm here to talk about now is the selection of additional communities or locations annually as appropriate. So that is this item here today. Next slide, please. So in the past, each of the past 2 years, we have had communities within our district designated for the AB 617 program. In the first year, there were 3 communities that 3 South Coast communities that were designated. And in 2019, there were 2 additional communities that were designated for this program. In each of these communities, we are developing a community emissions reduction, developing or implementing a community emissions reduction program, as well as a community air monitoring plan. Next slide. So we've taken on a process to do this community identification and prioritization process, looking at both technical data and also gathering input from the community, particularly through community input and nominations. We look at air pollution data, such as our own MATE study, the Multiple Air Toxics Exposure Study, as well as the statewide Cal Enviro screening tool. We developed a new screening tool looking at the locations of schools and highlighting areas where they have schools very close to either freeways or industrial zones. We looked at evidence from the community nominations, but also from other sources, looking at past community plans and programs. And really what we're looking for is looking to see whether these communities have had examples of past efforts that can help pave the way for rapid implementation of the AB 617 program. We know from our past and current experiences that this program requires a significant amount of community participation, and we do want to make sure that we are recommending communities that are already quite organized and already engaged around the issues of air quality. This year, we had a virtual community meeting that was held in August, and we actually received a good number of nominations. I'll talk about that in the subsequent slide. Next slide. This map just shows the communities that we identified that are under consideration or that have already been designated for this program. So the 3 communities in pink were the 3 that were designated in 2018. The 2 communities in green were designated in 2019, and then the rest of the communities are split kind of in these groups. There was a group of communities considered somewhat higher priority for this program, and those are the ones in orange, and the remaining communities are in blue. So you can see we have a total of 55 communities, so certainly a lot of interest and a lot of need for this program throughout our region. Next slide, please. We received many nominations from community members this year. It was over 130 nominations, the vast majority for South Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles, and one nomination for Inglewood. The nominations were primarily from community residents, but we also received some nominations from the offices of elected officials and community organizations. In particular, I wanted to note that many of these nominations highlighted the particular burdens that air pollution has had in their communities, citing a variety of sources, including oil and gas extraction, other types of air pollution sources, auto body shops, and also the fact that these communities are simultaneously dealing with a number of social stressors in these communities. Next slide. Okay. Now, before I dive into the current data on air pollution and environmental justice in these communities, I wanted to provide a little historical perspective on some policies in the past that contributed to the conditions that we see today. So this slide shows the Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation, or HOLC, redlining maps, which were produced in the 1930s to denote the areas where banks were not allowed to make home loans. And specifically, the racial composition of the community was a big part of their consideration. These discriminatory policies led to racial segregation as well as economic inequality in the cities, including in Los Angeles. So one click, please. So just to give you a frame of reference, here's downtown Los Angeles in that kind of blue circle. And one more click. I do want to highlight that South Los Angeles certainly is not the only community that that had experienced redlining, but certainly is a community that was redlined in these HOLC maps. Next slide, please. So the staff recommendation for inclusion in the AB 617 program this year is for the community of South Los Angeles. This is a community that has very high ranks in terms of CalEnviro screens. So looking at not just air pollution, but also a variety of environmental pollutants in that community, as well as socioeconomic factors. Also a very high rank in our based on our MATES-4 data. What we have done in the past couple of years is propose a preliminary boundary to CARB. And then what we do after that is work with the community steering committee to develop a finalized boundary. And so you can see that this map is intentionally fuzzy because it's intended to express that uncertainty in terms of where those final boundaries might end up. But based on the preliminary boundary, I wanted to provide a couple key numbers. The population in this area is nearly 400,000, which would make it already the largest of our communities by population. Next slide, please. We presented this information to the September Stationary Source Committee, and we heard testimony from a number of folks representing community organizations, as well as community residents, also some agencies. Through both that testimony, as well as through the nomination letters received, we wanted to highlight some community efforts that demonstrate how this community is ready for the AB 617 program. Specifically, the Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles received 2 AB 617 community air grants from CARB to create a community training program that includes data collection using sensors and different tools to build community capacity and increase this engagement around air quality issues. Several of these groups with the logos shown here have had experience working with land use agencies and other agencies in their policy development efforts. Some have been active on the AB 617 CARB statewide consultation group. And just wanted to highlight that they also in their testimony expressed willingness to help work to secure resources or develop partnerships to identify such resources to develop to support this work. Next slide, please. So I know we've already had some discussion about this morning, but as you know, this is a statewide program, and we've worked very hard to try to secure funding for this program in the past couple of years. But with the addition of a sixth community, we will need to identify resources to support this additional work while we are simultaneously implementing the community plans in the 5 previously designated communities. So part of this recommendation is for staff to work with the legislature to seek about $4 to $6 million annually for the next 6 years to support this implementation of AB 617 in this South Los Angeles community. Next slide, please. So if the board approves the recommendation today, here's what would happen next. We would submit the recommendation to the CARB staff. And then in the next couple of months, we would begin that process of seeking that funding as directed by the board. In December, CARB is planning to consider communities across the state for designation for this program. Next slide. So finally, the staff recommends the approval of the recommendation of the South Los Angeles community for the AB 617 program, and also to direct staff to seek funding from this legislature to support this work. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions by any of my colleagues for the presentation?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I am pleased, and thank you for the presentation, Ms. Ghosh. I appreciate the comprehensive presentation, how far we've come to this point. I'm pleased to support the addition of the South Los Angeles community for the 3-year implementation. I'm reminded from the beginning of the AB 617 process, the community in South Los Angeles has demanded to be included. They've organized and rallied together for inclusion and received overwhelming majority of the inclusion vote, which is a proud moment for us in South Los Angeles. Clearly, there's work to be done. I understand that we need, as indicated in the report, we still need state funding, but the support, the collaboration that we have, the coalition that we built with the community, elected officials, and the EJ groups is strong. And we're all committed to working together alongside the district to secure the necessary funding from the state. That is our action moving forward. I'm reminded of the support from my LA City Council members, Herb Wesson and Marquise Harris Dawson, and our local assembly member, Mike Gibson, for their steadfast support of this item. I'd also like to thank the community members and the PSRLA for their support and amazing community organizing. We do have work to do. I'm looking forward to partnering with all these organizations as we seek the funding moving forward. And I ask in a time where the issues of racial inequities have been talked about not only here locally, but throughout this country. This, and that the map that shows redlining of the housing plan in the South LA communities is yet another reminder that we must not forget about the racial inequities that have suffered here in the South Los Angeles community. I take this call from you from Watts in my South LA office, and you know, we need to push the district along with our community-based organizations and elected officials to identify some funding and move forward to make this a reality. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman Buscaino. Is there any other comment on this item before we take public testimony?
Councilmember Mitchell has her hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Burke. I'm very supportive of this community. It's not like any of the other communities that we have already approved in the South Coast Air District. And Dr. Burke mentioned earlier that we haven't really identified a community that is primarily a Black residential area, and this one is. About 2 years ago, CARB staff came down to Los Angeles and a bus was procured for CARB staff and board members, as well as some from the air quality from our district. And we did a tour of this area, and the outstanding impact here is multiple oil wells that are in neighborhoods right next to homes, right next to schools, right next to preschools. And so I'm really glad to see that we're focusing in on this community. I would highly recommend that we approve this community for the AB 617 program. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
a question, Dr. Burke.
Yes, Senator Delgado.
Totally agree that I with the comments already received about the community, but I just want to clarify, in staff's presentation, I noted that the ethnicity is actually 65% Latino.
Yes.
Yes, so I just want to make sure that we do provide for Spanish language and interpreters and make sure that we're sensitive to the, changing makeup of the community.
The area that is in question was 100% Black for a long time, but it's changed. And unfortunately, one of my concerns about this area is that it's changing again. And it's undergoing gentrification, and it's moving back to the majority community because of the location. So it's not going to be a Latino or a Black area if we mess around with this too long. So I'm really ready to get to this rolling. I lived in that area for a long time. And so did Dr. Parker live in that area for a long time. And my family's roots are in that area. And I feel more comfortable there than any other place in the city. So I would really be proud to have this area included. I was very chagrined, as Wayne will tell you, when it wasn't one of the initial areas, but life goes on. So I would definitely will support.
Just a sec.
My phone's talking back to me again. I never want to use that phone either. I definitely want to support Councilman Buscaino's motion to move this district forward. Is there any other comment before we take public comment? I'm glad to see the Supervisor Bartlett has joined us. It's good to see you. How you been? Ben, can you help me out with public comment there?
Very well. Erica Blyther is our first commenter, followed by Roberto Perez. Erica?
Good morning, everyone. I'm with the City of Los Angeles, Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas, and I'd like to say that the City of Los Angeles, Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas is pleased with the AQMD's recommendation of South LA, as there are many citizen concerns and disadvantaged communities about emissions from the 3 drill sites in the area, Jefferson, Murphy, and Allenco. And we welcome the advanced air monitoring that this program can provide. The need for adequate funding is evident, as this is a very resource-intensive program. Please ensure that funding is provided to make this community program a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Roberto Perez?
Yes, hello. My name is Roberto Perez. I am calling you today on behalf of LA City Council Member Marquise Harris Dawson. I'm an Economic Development Deputy for the office, and I want to express the council members' steadfast support for this item and the recommendation for South LA to be an AB 617 community. Our district, as you may know, comprises a large portion of South Los Angeles. It's a largely Black and brown district, and it's been historically disinvested and suffers from a host of environmental inequities. So we're very excited to see this move forward. Thank you to the board, and thank you to Scope Los Angeles for all the organizing work that they've been doing alongside their partners to include South LA and deliver environmental justice to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Andre Scope. Ruth?
Muy buenos días. Disculpen otra vez. Mi nombre es Ru Andrade. Muy buenos días, Distrito de Manejo del Aire de Costa del Sur. Mi nombre es Ru Andrade, organizadora de SCO. Vivo en el sur de Los Ángeles. Estoy aquí hoy porque me preocupo la contaminación del aire. Soy parte del sur de Los Ángeles. Push embajadora del aire de calidad. Estoy aquí porque la comunidad del sur de Los Ángeles no ha sido seleccionado para un plan ABC 17 y nuestra comunidad está lista para comenzar e implementar soluciones para reducir la contaminación del aire. Pedimos que AQMD escuche a nuestra comunidad que han sido descuidados durante demasiado tiempo. Participé en la Academia de Calidad del Aire de Clash Push porque me preocupo por mejorar la calidad del aire en mi comunidad. Sabemos que la exposición de la contaminación del aire está relacionada con la mortalidad infantil, el asma y otros impactos diversos para la salud. Los receptores sensibles como las comunidades de color y los de bajo recurso, los niños, las mujeres embarazadas y las personas mayores tienen mayor riesgo de exposición a largo plazo a la contaminación del aire. En el 2010, el aire del sur de Los Ángeles tuvo una de las más altas tasas de hospitalizaciones y visitas de emergencia por asma y otros más en el condado. Yo personalmente, ¿verdad? Sufro de lo que es alergias, igual mi comunidad, mi familia y asma. Es una de las cosas, ¿verdad? Que se han hecho datos también. Hay datos que se han hecho encuestas a la comunidad, cuál es el impacto de tener 3 pozos de petróleo alrededor de nuestra comunidad. Como lo he mencionado, uno de ellos es el que está ubicado en Woodlawn y Jefferson, el otro está en Alenco, en la 23 y Estrella, y el otro es en Marfin, que lo tenemos por la Adams y Western. Son 3 pozos de petróleo, ¿verdad? Que hemos estado luchando porque se han hecho esos estudios y no, son datos que han quedado. Y otra de las cosas, queremos el llamado a la acción más que todo, a esta acción. Nuestra comunidad está preocupada porque el sur de Los Ángeles está quedando fuera del programa de protección del aire en AQMD y necesitamos asegurar que nos asegure de que nuestras comunidades sean seleccionadas para un plan de ABC 17 de mejorar el aire. El sur de Los Ángeles ha sido ignorado durante mucho tiempo, como ya le he dicho, y merece que esta oportunidad para
Thank you. Our next speaker is a phone number ending in 223. It's a 323 number ending in 223. Go ahead, you're unmuted. The speaker of the phone number ending in 223, go ahead.
Hi, this is Hugo Garcia, campaign coordinator for environmental justice for Esperanza Community Housing. And as such, I coordinate the People Not Pozos campaign in South Central LA in the University Park community where Alenco Energy is located. But before I go any further, I want to thank the board for the express support for including South LA in the AB 617 program. So this University Park community has been subject to contamination by Alanco Oil Drilling Company that is located within 50 feet of the properties and adjacent to Mount St. Mary's University and Lanterman LAUSD High School. Not to mention another high school down the street, New Design Charter School, and parks and churches within a few blocks. Esperanza and the People Not Puzzles campaign and the University Park residents are all in support of increased regulatory oversight of toxic air and polluting industries, the quality of life in regards to the needs to change, to make some change. The University Park wants to eliminate the negative health repercussions that residents have suffered, including profusely bleeding noses, asthma, flare-ups, severe headaches, and horrific odors. It's because of these living conditions that we strongly urge AQMD to support the inclusion of South Central LA. And to be clear, South Central includes all South LA. Yes, we want support for South Central's inclusion in AB 617 Air Improvement Plan. And just one last point, the mention of the population, the Latino population of about approximately 65%, and still a strong portion of South Central LA is African American with, and when you put the two communities of color together, it's like over 95% communities of color. So we really think it's about time that communities of color be protected just as other communities. So thank you, and we look forward to the inclusion of South Central Los Angeles.
Thank you for your comments. Aretha? Aretha, you should be.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
Good morning, South Coast AQMD. My name is Aretha, and I live in South LA. And I'm here today because I'm concerned about the air pollution. I am part of South Central Los Angeles, Bush Ambassador of Air Quality Academy. I'm here because I have a big concern about clean air and knowing about the pollution that's in my community so I can help protect my family. South LA has long been overlooked for this AB 617 plan, and our community is ready to start implementing solutions to reduce air pollution. We know that air pollution exposes has been related to infant mortality, asthma, cancer, adverse health impacts, and it's people of color in low-income communities. Pregnant women and children are most at risk, and seniors. And it's enough, you know. And my personal story is that I have asthma. My brother has asthma. I've been in South LA for 30 years, and I see no improvement. We are in great need of AB 617, and I'm hoping that you'll consider that. What I really got out of this division is just to have a healthier South Central LA. It can be accomplished by cleaner air, just a transition of key industries of concern, holding agencies accountable to communities of color and low-income communities, and collectively advancing vision of a greener, healthier community here in South LA. I can't think of anything better than to be able to breathe clean air. And with the COVID and things that are already before that, now we have a COVID situation. And that's even worse for people with asthma, high blood pressure. It's not fair to us. I live in a community where there's nothing but body shops, car mechanics, people distracting their oil and their stuff in the street. They're not disposing of it properly. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, a very healthier, greener place to breathe. And we deserve that here in South LA. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sonja Taylor? Sonja?
Good morning. My name is Sonia. Good morning to the South Coast AQMD. My name is Sonia Taylor, and I live in South LA. I'm here because I'm concerned about the air pollution. I'm part of the South Central Los Angeles Push Ambassador of the Air Quality Academy. And also, I am a outreach worker for SCOPE. Now, the South Central community of LA has not been selected for an AB 617 plan, and our community is ready. You know, our health, as for me, you know, I have allergies. You know, I stay in South LA, and in my backyard, there's a auto body shop behind. So I can't even enjoy family and friends going out, you know, since it's summer, going out to sit in the backyard and barbecue. You know, it's ridiculous. I have to close my windows. I get headaches, you know, and it's just sad. You know, our community are concerned that the South Central Los Angeles is being left out, you know, out of the air production program. And SCAQMD needs to ensure our communities are selected for an AB 617 air improvement plan. And I just want to thank you guys for, you know, supporting, South Central LA. And hopefully we get together and, you know, work it out, you know, work on this plan together. And I just want to thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I have looks like Jack Short. I'm guessing there's a space in there, Jack. Jack Short, or is it Jack Short? We're not hearing you. You are unmuted on Zoom. Jack, we're not hearing you on that device. Maybe you try a different one or try coming back in, but Jack Short, we're try one more time. Ron, I'm not seeing the unmuted on our side on Jack. Can you try again?
He was unmuted and he's having issues on his side.
All right, we'll come back to you, Jack. Let's go ahead and try Galaxy S8. Galaxy S8, you need to state your name for the record if you could, and then go ahead and start. And Galaxy S8, you need to unmute at this point. Oh, and I see Jack is maybe unmuted again. Jack, can you try again? We're not hearing you on this end. So we have Jack Short trying to unmute, also Galaxy S8. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to our next speaker, which is Harvey Etter. Harvey, you're a pro at this. We'll get you unmuted.
Hello, am I being heard?
Go ahead, Harvey. Yep.
You can hear me? All right, thanks. Okay, I want to note that on the last issue that was part of 22 to 25, I tried to speak. So you called me several times. 3-4 times I tried to go *6 and I was purged. Okay, and I called over to 222 number to IT and couldn't get through to them. And then I called to the clerks, 2500. Someone called, nothing. Okay, I have to go back to, and also that was supposed to be the consent call under the motion was 1 through 18. Check the record. Did not include 22 and 25, and it needs to be addressed as well. Okay, so this time I'm speaking to not, these are process questions. Okay, look, I want to speak more on general the overview of what's happening here. We were the first consultants to the PUC in the 70s and 80s on bringing up low-income subsidies that were taxing through the rate base, the low-income subsidizing upper-income buying solar. And the first solar proceedings, $180 million, the demonstration program. So we did the first earmark, the low-income solar equity program, in 1980. Okay, that hasn't been even applied by the district or by CARB as far as I know, or the PUC. You're all captured agencies. Okay, what that means, I'm incorporating by reference a class from the winter of '74 on the political economics of energy in the United States, okay? And it shows the integration of the oil industry into chemicals and agriculture and the direct interlocks with Safeway and all of this. It was taught by Professor Claudia Carr, who's at Berkeley in the energy and started the women's studies movement at UC Santa Cruz, whatnot, okay? This is important stuff. This stuff permeates our society. This is 50 years ago, 47 years ago. So imagine, you can't imagine, okay? This is what needs to be changed. And the way it's done, equitably and justly. So all these legislation and everything that goes on, okay, rather than, okay, what the state's got, you know, we've got $57 billion a year, and I think that's low, that's spent on energy in the district, according to the 16 plan. We got the Solar New Deal from the head of the research, Katzenstein. Okay, that's in 20 years, that's $1 trillion. In 40 years, to finance solar, that's a couple of $1 trillion. That's what we're talking about. You know, Trump bad-mouthed the figure of 100 trillion for the U.S. Okay, well, that's reality. This morning, they said 90 trillion has been spent in the world so far on the COVID. That's a virus. That's a pandemic. It's SARS-3. We had 13, then they covered up in 12 with MERS, and that had 34% death rate, and now we've got 3. And in scientific papers refer to it as that. Also incorporating by reference for Reed Zakaria, article.
Thank you, Mr. Eder. We'll go ahead and try Jack Short one more time. Jack, can you try unmuting on your side? Jack, we're not hearing any audio. I see you've unmuted, but your microphone is not picking anything up. So maybe try another device, or make sure you don't have a local mute switch on your device that maybe is still turned off. All right, we'll go ahead and try one more time for Galaxy S8. Galaxy S8, are you there? Oh. Maybe heard somebody, but not hearing anybody now. Galaxy S8 one more time. All right, we're gonna go ahead and go on to Paula Torundo. Paula?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Paula Torrado, and I am the Air and Toxics Policy Analyst at Physicians for Social Responsibility Los Angeles. So thank you for your time and for supporting our community of South Central Los Angeles for AB 617 selection and for all of your efforts to reduce pollution burden in most overburdened communities. I'm currently implementing our community air protection grant in South Central Los Angeles with our SELA push project that includes SCOPE, CHC, USC, and Occidental College. We have trained over 70 community residents, 50% Latino and 46 Black residents who are ready to engage in air quality policy at the local, regional, and state levels. These communities are experiencing the health impacts of legacy air pollution and decades of environmental racism, and are experiencing the impacts of oil and gas production, metal manufacturing facilities, auto body shops, dry cleaners, all the way from West Adams and Jeffersons, Florissant Westerns, and Watts. And our communities cannot wait any longer for tangible solutions that tackle the root causes of pollution burden. So our project is bringing together a collective of progressive residents, community organizations, and innovative relationships with small businesses owners of metal facilities and professionals with cleaners to start paving a path towards thriving communities through solutions that are rooted in communities' needs and that support clean production, economic justice, and a just transition. And collectively, we're pushing for air quality improvements and measurements that can support our communities. We are ready to do the work with the district to implement these solutions, leverage various funding streams, including our community air protection grant, our TCC grant, and a strong advocacy with CARB and the legislature to support funding for our community selection. And we just want to make sure that our communities are ready, because our communities are ready to work together to achieve tangible emissions reductions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Vice Chair Benoit, we do have a caller on the Spanish line. You can't see them in your list, but we can enable them. They've been waiting from the beginning.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead and unmute yourself.
This is phone number 751.
Phone number 751.
Go ahead.
Hola.
Please go ahead.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Guadalupe Rivas, de la organización de SCOP. Vivo en Los Ángeles, California, y estoy aquí porque me preocupa la contaminación del aire. Soy parte del sur centro de Los Ángeles, embajador de la calidad del aire. La comunidad del sur centro de Los Ángeles no ha sido seleccionada para un plan AB617 y nuestra comunidad está lista para comenzar a implementar soluciones para reducir la contaminación del aire. Nuestras comunidades han sido descuidadas durante demasiado tiempo. En lo personal, mi familia, vecinos y amistades hemos sido afectados por la calidad del mal aire. Nuestros hijos y sus compañeros sufren por asma, sinusitis, alergias y otras reacciones a la mala calidad del aire. Esperamos que piensen en nuestros pequeños niños, ya que ellos son el futuro de nuestra nación. Sería fabuloso darles una buena calidad de aire y así darles un futuro saludable y más años de vida. Encarecidamente suplico, escúchenos, piense en ellos, nuestros niños. Gracias por permitir entrar en tu corazón. Yo sé que lo harás. Gracias por su apoyo. Gracias a AQMD y AQMD. Gracias.
Thank you for your comments. Gina Scope.
Morning,
Gina?
everyone. Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Gina, go ahead. I realize you're from Scope. I'm sorry. I
Thank you.
put that
Oh,
as your
no
last
worries.
name. Go ahead.
No worries. I put the comma there just to note. But so yeah, morning again. Gina, Policy and Research Associate with Scope, and I just want to thank AQMD staff and board for expressing your support of South Central LA, and to staff for taking the time to meet with us a couple weeks ago as well. So you've heard from some of our air quality ambassadors today. So I just want to share that in addition to our work in SCLA Push, our community members are currently engaged in the Transformative Climate Communities Planning Grant to identify goals and strategies for a just transition in the Slauson Corridor, which includes anti-displacement efforts. So our community leaders are looking at sustainable solutions. And I just also want to mention that through our work with the California Environmental Justice Alliance, we're also considering and advocating for alternatives to cap and trade to fund environmental solutions. So this is just all to share that South Central has organized and knowledgeable community residents who are ready to leverage our resources and to continue our work through AB 617. And I want to thank you all again for consideration in selecting South Central LA today. Thanks.
Thank you, Gina. All right, our next speaker, Martha Dina Agulo. Martha?
Good, yes, I'm here. Good morning, board members. My name is Marta Dina Arguello. I'm the Executive Director of Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I wear multiple hats. I'm also the co-chair of Standing Together Against Neighborhood Drilling, and you've heard a number of our community members speak to the issue of the need to address oil drilling in our communities. But you've also heard from many of the women, amazing women who have participated in our South LA push program. And we are incredibly proud of the work that we are doing as Latino and Black communities together, fighting for clean air in South LA. But as the previous speaker said, we know that the problems in our community are deep and complex, and our breadth of organizations and networks within South LA, collectively we are working on clean air, on incarceration rates in our communities, on fighting displacement, so that as we have nicer communities, more clean air, that we actually can stay in those communities. So I want to thank the board for their support for South LA. I want to encourage you to implement the strongest possible solutions out of the current air improvement plans. Success breeds success. And that breeds movement to find new solutions, including alternatives to cap and trade, so that we can actually fund the work that we need to revitalize our communities and make South LA healthier. And lastly, I want to say, much of the work that our organization has done over the many years has been to really create a partnership between health professionals and community members. And that's what we're creating in South LA. As Paula said, we're working with businesses and we're working looking at technology solutions for these three sectors: metals, wet cleaning, and auto body shops. And we want to take a good neighbor policy approach, because many of our members from the South LA Push also work in those industries. And we're working with leaders in those industries to transition them. So as all of our folks have said, we are ready and very able to take 617 where it needs to be, to fight for real enforcement and real reductions in air quality and improvements in public health. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker, Oscar M. Oscar?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. Good morning, South Coast Air Quality Management District. My name is Oscar Morales and I live in South Central. And I am here today because I am concerned about the air pollution. I am part of South Central Los Angeles Push Ambassador of Air Quality Academy. I am here because the South Central community of LA has not been selected for AB 617 plan. And our community is ready to start implementing solutions to reduce air pollution. Not only that, it also has infected our lives with health problems. It mostly infects children, pregnant women, seniors, and low-income communities. For example, me, I have allergies and this has affected me because every time I go outside, I either start sneezing a lot and it takes me a while to stop, or I start bleeding from my nose. There was this one time that I started bleeding from my nose. It wouldn't stop, and that day I didn't have to go to school for that reason. I just want to say, please select AB 670 Air Improvement Plan for our community, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ron, do we have anybody else in the other Spanish side, or?
No, we do not.
Okay, just wanted to check. All right, in Galaxy 8 and Jack Short, we've tried a couple times now. Do we want to take them off the list for now and have them put their hands back up if they wish to speak? Thank you. Manuel Hernandez. We can try Jack Short again. Jack, are you able to speak now?
Buenos días, mi nombre es Manuel Hernández.
Go ahead, Mr. Hernandez.
Soy miembro de SCOP. Vivo en el sur centro de Los Ángeles. Mi preocupación es porque tenemos en la comunidad demasiada contaminación. Me da pena que no tomen al sur centro de Los Ángeles porque somos una comunidad muy grande de afroamericanos, latinos, americanos blancos, asiáticos, que necesitamos un aire puro. En mi casa tenemos 2 niños que padecen de asma. Es duro ver cómo uno de tus hijos sufre un ataque de asma. Soy una persona adulta saliendo de una operación de corazón abierto, con alergias. Necesitamos de su apoyo para la aprobación de la AB 617, para luchar para mejorar el aire puro de nuestra comunidad. Contamos con su apoyo para la aprobación de la AB 617. Muchas gracias. Buen día.
Thank you for your comments. All right, next we have Chris Chavez.
Yes, good morning again, board members. This is Chris Chavez. I am the Deputy Policy Director for Coalition for Clean Air, and again, a member of the Wilmington, Carson, West Long Beach AB 617 Steering Committee. I do want to speak in strong support of including South Los Angeles as a year 3 community. This community has long been disproportionately impacted by various pollution sources, and the community that lives there has a number of socioeconomic vulnerabilities stemming back to land use decisions, discriminatory policies over the past century. Certainly, this community is well organized and well positioned to have a successful 617 process. The organizations that have spoken today and have been involved with community air monitoring, as well as just generally getting the community organized, are well established and have done a phenomenal job, and really can be trusted to represent the needs and the desires and the hopes of the South Los Angeles community. I do want to touch briefly on the financing issue, which again was discussed during the consent calendar item, but also want to discuss it here as it's relevant, is I think one of the main things that South Coast can do in its advocacy for more funding to the state legislature is to really incorporate the community voices who are participating in this program. Again, it gets into the demonstration of what AB 617 is doing on the ground. And that is ultimately the paradigm of AB 617, is what is it doing on the ground? What is it doing in our neighborhoods? How is it empowering people? How is it empowering the community to make a positive difference locally? So certainly I feel that as the district goes back to the legislature to advocate for funding, to advocate for the success of this program, incorporate those community voices, empower those community voices. I'm sure many of them would be happy to testify to the state legislature in support of this program from all three cohorts of the communities. So again, I just want to speak in strong support of South LA being included in the 617 community, and again reiterate that I believe that the community advocates who've participated in this program are more than happy, more than willing to step up and advocate alongside with you for its continued funding and success. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next speaker is O.T. Bredmond. O.T.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Greetings from South Central Los Angeles. My name is Otisha Mosley Bermond, and I'm an Environmental Awareness Director at Los Angeles Brotherhood Crusade. And as part of our work with the transformative climate communities, we've been mobilizing young people ages 14 to 24 to become advocates for their community around environment. The youth have conducted research and created opportunities to engage their youth communities in dialogue around climate justice. And through their work, they've discovered many unmet needs and areas of growth that can effectuate climate change, specifically along the Slauson corridor, if implemented. Including South Los Angeles in AB 617 is imperative to keep the momentum of this work moving forward. So I want to thank you guys for considering us, and we hope to be one of the next partners. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, before you go away, one of my great moments in the environmental movement in the minority community was when the guy who was the chair of your organization went out on the railroad tracks and stood in front of a locomotive that was coming down the tracks to stop them from coming through the Black community. I will never forget that as long as I live.
Wow, and thank you for sharing that, because I'm excited to be a part of an organization with such a history with this type of work, and so I'm thankful for you sharing that, and we continue to fight for our community in the same way still to this day.
Yeah, great organization you have.
Thank you.
Very good. Our next speaker, Ignacio.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ignacio, and I'm ambassador of PSR LA for their quality, and I live in South Central LA. I have an air monitor here in my house that measures the air. And every time I wake up, I see that it's high because I live near the 110 freeway. First of all, I want to thank South Coast Air Quality Management District for taking us into consideration this year. And we're ready to implement AB 617 here in my area. And I live, this area where I live is mostly a mixture of residential and industrial. So we have a lot of factories here in my area that contaminate our air here, plus the 110 freeway. And we have a school, 61st Street Elementary School, which is right by the 110 freeway. Now, with this COVID pandemic, children are not in campus now, but when they return back to campus, I am concerned about them breathing that poor air quality from the cars coming in the freeway. I want to thank you for taking us into consideration, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ignacio. Our next speaker, I have a Galaxy Tab A8. So someone trying to speak on a Galaxy tablet? Again, we have a speaker, Galaxy Tab A8. You need to unmute on your side now.
Hello.
There we go. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Patricia, and I am a member of SCOPE. I also was born and raised in South LA, moved out the community, moved back in. So I'm rooted in South LA. Family members stay there and all that. And I just want to say South LA needs to be selected for AB 617. And we thank the AQMD for supporting our community to clean up the air. And some of my family members do suffer from asthma. I worked on the Air Quality Academy, and we do have a lot of shops, nail shops, tire shops, auto body mechanic shops in our community next to houses and stuff. So once again, I just want to say thank you for considering us, and I look forward to working with you.
Great, thank you. Next up, I have Araceli Silvestro. Araceli? Araceli, you should be able to unmute now. Again, Araceli Silvestro.
Sí, hola, buenos días.
Hola, go ahead.
Sí, soy Araceli Celestino. Buenos días, Distrito y Manejo del Aire de la Calidad de Costa Azul. Soy Araceli Celestino, yo vivo aquí en Los Ángeles, California. Me preocupa la contaminación del aire. Soy parte del sur centro de Los Ángeles. La comunidad de aquí, del sur centro, no ha sido seleccionada para el plan de ABC 617 y ya está lista para comenzar a implementar soluciones para la reducción de la contaminación. Ha habido mucho conflicto, mucho problema, familiares, conocidos, amigos, vecinos que han tenido asma. Yo incluso, ¿verdad? Que tengo manchas en la piel, granitos, dolor de cabeza, por la misma situación. Mamis embarazadas o va de malformación por la calidad del aire o así, ¿verdad? Digo, que son mayor riesgo. Los niños, las mamás de mayor riesgo de exposición a largo plazo. Yo vivo cerca de de petróleo, conductos de petróleo. Y sí es difícil porque al amanecer está, ¿cómo se llama? El clima y los días de colores, grises, rojos, anaranjados, el olor a humo. También va a muchos talleres mecánicos del área. Pozos petroleros, las industrias, es algo complicado, el estar así porque lo vivimos día a día, es mucho. muchas enfermedades. Aparte de todo eso, ¿verdad? Que no hay nada concluso. Ya tiene años, años y años y más años eso. Que se han hecho campañas, que se han hecho meeting, que se han hecho muchas propagandas de eso. Hay uno exactamente en la Butler Exposition, algo cerca de donde vivo yo. Entonces, no se ha solucionado nada. Sigue esos conductos de petróleo en esa área. Sigue, no se ha hecho ningún cambio. Nada, nada, nada. Y eso es constante cada año, cada año, cada año. Ahorita por la pandemia, bueno, ¿verdad? Pero se está tratando la manera de que se mejore un poco, algo. Que se haga un cambio con eso. Porque es difícil la situación. Ahorita más con los incendios y todo eso. Gracias, gracias, gracias. Su Quality Magnet Distrito. Gracias.
Thank you. Very good, thank you. Next speaker is Gloria Medina. Gloria, can you unmute?
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, good morning, Gloria Medina. I'm Interim Executive Director at Scope, based in South Los Angeles. We have been here for over 30 years, and we have been organizing at the grassroots level community members around issues that are really important for them, like racial, economic, and environmental justice. And we are just here to thank you for having this conversation and considering South Central Los Angeles for this nomination. I don't think I have to tell you what are the impacts or the threats that South LA is facing at this moment in terms of environmental issues. You've heard it from many of the members here already, from many of the community members. So I know that you know the urgency, but I am here to just thank you and encourage you to make sure that our families don't continue to pay our lack of inaction. We have had, as Araceli Celestino just said, we have had many promises of cleanup in our community, and it hasn't happened for a long time. So there has been long inaction, and we think it's time to do something now. It is the time, it is not only important for us to address these problems and to invest in it, but we need to make sure that it's community led. And we have done the work with many of our partners here today to educate, to build skills, to make sure that community members understand in terms of the science and the data, what is going on in their community besides what they're experiencing every day. So our community members are ready. They're ready to to implement the ideas that they have based on their experience of living in South Los Angeles. I would say that it's not only critical to invest, but it is also a smart investment. You already have the groundwork in South Los Angeles. You already have the grassroots leaders. You already have the data that's been collected. You already have the partnerships and the strategy that is starting to be developed around what it is that we need to do. So please, I'm asking that you help us bring these health protections that will help continue moving us towards the path of cleaner and healthier communities, particularly here in South Los Angeles. Thank you for your time. Thank you for considering us. And we look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I have up is Amanda. Amanda, go ahead. I'm not hearing anything from you, Amanda. Maybe check it again if there's maybe a local mute button on your device.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
There you go. Now we can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Amanda Jimenez, and I'm representing the Department of Preventive Medicine at USC. We have worked with PSRLA and community residents to discuss environmental health impacts associated with air pollution. We deployed 5 stationary purple air monitors in locations identified as hotspots and areas of concern by the community. And these monitors consistently measured PM 2.5 levels above the healthy annual standard 40 to 50% of the time. Air pollution in Southern California does not impact all communities equally, and the South Central community faces cumulative environmental burdens more than just air quality. Thank you so much for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you, Amanda. I think you finished up there.
Is that it?
And Amanda, I'm on Purple Air right now looking at your sensor, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have a phone number ending in 030. Starts with, it's a 213 area code. Again, phone number 213, area code ending in 030. You're unmuted on our side. You need to unmute on your side. Ron, remind me, it's *6 to unmute, correct?
That's correct.
Yep. So the person with phone number ending in 030, you need to hit *6. Oh, looks like you did. Go ahead and try speaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Good morning. My name is Robert Jackson. I'm here representing Senator Holly Mitchell in District 30 as a senior representative. I'm very happy to hear you here to speak about the importance of having South LA to be considered for AB 617. As you all know, since 1920, South LA has been a prominent area in Los Angeles holistically, and we have been passed up on several things. And I think that this is a very important initiative that we can help improve South LA and its conditions for its Native community members. When you think about all the cities surrounding it has been considered in the past 2 years, anywhere from Long Beach to Carson to Wilmington, East LA, West Commerce, South LA is not that far away from those cities, and they're also heavily impacted by pollution. When you think about Gardena and the industrial area, the oil refineries in South Bay and in Watts. So we just want to make sure, the Senator wants to make sure that AB 617 in South LA can work together to improve the conditions of the community. And I myself I am a South Central native, and I live there now, and I can tell you wholeheartedly how much this means to me. And I really, really am happy to hear all of the lovely sentiments from the board and everyone on the call and the Zoom that has support for South LA to be considered for AB 617. In 2010, South Central LA had the highest asthma emergency visits and hospitalizations in the county. South Central LA census tracks consistently and overwhelmingly scope to tap into 5 to 10% of most vulnerable communities in both environmental and socioeconomic factors, according to the California environmental screening tool. So again, I appreciate your time to give me to speak about in support of this. And I appreciate the words that Dr. Burke spoke about gentrification and being a South LA native, because that's where I'm from and I feel safe there as well. And I think Councilman Buscaino and Councilman Mitchell and everyone who shows support for this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have Harvey Eder back in the queue. Harvey, you spoke to this item already. You'll have the opportunity to speak on item 28, 29 in public comment. So we're going to move on. Our next speaker is Elliot Gonzalez, and this will be our last speaker. Elliot.
Hi, I actually came in a little bit late. Can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay, yeah, I came in a little bit late, and so I know the protocol is to speak on the item before us, but I think that I actually missed that opportunity. But I wanted to speak on the indirect source rule, and mainly I just wanted to ask that this board not consider natural gas to be a clean energy source. As many of us know, natural gas is usually produced by fracking, and we all. I'm sorry.
So if you want to speak at public comment, I don't believe that item is on the agenda today, or if you did miss it, I apologize, but you could speak at general public comment.
What he's referring to is on the buses, they wanted zero. Okay.
Well, so did I miss that comment? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you missed your opportunity.
Yeah, we're on number 27 now.
Is it possible for me to just wrap up my comment and just to include it for the board?
The answer is no. I'm sorry.
There is general public comment for items not on the agenda at the end of the meeting, for items that are not on the agenda. With that, that's our last speaker, Dr. Burke.
All right. Then we'll bring the item back to the board and for discussion by board members. We've had statements from both Councilman Buscaino and Senator Delgado. Are there any other of my colleagues who would like to speak on this item? I'm going to say 1 minute. This is a kind of a strange feeling for me today on this item. Because when I came to Los Angeles, this area was not like it is today. It was not polluted. It was segregated. When I came to Los Angeles, no blacks, no browns were allowed to live north of Sunset Boulevard. So we were all contained in a very specific area. So I feel just so encouraged by what has transpired here today, that the movement is moving forward. It's hard to imagine, but when I first started, people of color were not considered, were not allowed to have an environmental interest, because we were viewed as having no interest in the environment whatsoever. It was a very cruel atmosphere in which to exist. Today is got to be a milestone for the district and for the environmental movement. So I'll be happy to entertain a motion for approval of this item.
Move the item, Buscaino.
I'll second Benoit.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Would the clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Barger. Supervisor Barger. Supervisor Bartlett.
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino.
An enthusiastic yes.
Councilmember Cacchiotti.
The second enthusiastic yes.
Senator Delgado.
I'll keep that going. Very, very
Board Member Krakoff.
Yes.
Mayor McAllen. Mayor McAllen.
You're muted, Larry.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
Supervisor Perez.
Ron, Supervisor Perez looks like he's on the attendee side with his hand raised. Can we move him over and he should be able to meet?
He's moved on.
Supervisor Perez.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Yes.
Vice Chair Benoit.
Absolutely, yes.
And Chairman Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 12-0, 1 absent.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item 28 and 29. Wayne, are those just presentations? I heard one of the people before you got on the Zoom call say they were willing to waive the presentation.
Dr. Burke, we're always willing to waive presentation if the board desires to move forward.
Is there anyone who has any questions on 28 or the report on 29?
I'll move adoption on 28.
Second.
1179.1.
Dr. Burke.
Call the roll.
Hold on, Dr. Burke.
Dr. Burke.
Point
Yes.
of order. Point of order.
Yes,
This
sir.
is a public hearing item, so we need
Yeah,
to.
yeah, you're right. We need to take public comment. Do we have public comment?
We do. I was just about to stop in and take the comment. We have a Harvey Eder first up with 2 other commenters after that.
Okay, let's hear the public.
Harvey, go ahead.
Hello. Hello, am I being heard?
Yes,
Yeah.
this is on item
Hello?
number 28.
Okay. This is a point of information, parliamentary procedure. I want to know from the clerk of the board if the motion for forget the consent calendar was made for items 1 through 18. Yes or no?
This
Harvey,
is
you
a public comment on item 28.
No, I've got to process information first because I think I was not allowed to speak on 22 and 25 because they said the motion covered that, and the motion I remember only went 1 through 18.
Harvey, at the beginning of the meeting, staff let everybody know that the public comments for consent calendar and the board calendar will be taken together for a total of 3 minutes. That announcement was made at the beginning of the meeting.
I remember
Harvey,
the motion being otherwise. I just want
that's
to make a
standard
comment
language.
On 28.
When I brought up these other process programs about not being able to speak, I got cut off in 3 minutes, and I should have been not
Harvey,
done to my time.
Item 28, or we're going to move on.
What's the item about? If there was a presentation, I didn't waive it, and I want to hear it, and people want to hear it. That's for every presentation. Okay, I'll go back to 617 South Central. I've been living on the streets in South Central. I've been living in their shelters and stuff, okay? I got my 12 through Maxine.
This doesn't appear to be related to item 28.
You're right. Mr. Eder, I'm sorry, that's back to the last item we already spoke to. We're going to go ahead and move on. Our next speaker is David Rothbart. Mr. Rothbart, go ahead to item number 28.
Good morning, I'm David Rothbart. I'm with the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts and want to thank staff for their hard work on this rule. It was a very challenging rule, and I personally want to thank Mike Morris, who actually was even taking calls from me on Saturdays to talk about the rule. So thank you very much. We're in support of the rule.
Very good, thank you. Our next speaker is Stefan Jespin.
Hi, this is Steve Jepson, the Executive Director for the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Works, or SCAP. Thank you, Chair and Board, for the opportunity to comment today. We are in support of the adoption of Rule 1179.1, lowering emissions from POTW biogas-fired equipment. We wish to thank South Coast Air Quality Management District staff, in particular, Susan Nakamura, Mike Morris, Melissa Gamoning, and Kevin Aurelia, for working very closely with SCAP throughout the process. Our frequent Zoom calls were thoughtful and professional, and as David mentioned, oftentimes after regular business hours. As usual, the emission limits for our sector are low, despite the small amount of overall emissions in the district from our sector. However, although the emission limits are low, they're achievable with reasonable investments and effort. As such, we can support this rule and are proud to do our part to improve air quality in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the speakers I have besides Harvey Eder, who's asked to speak again. So, Mr. Chair, we can probably go ahead and take a vote.
I'd like to ask legal counsel, should I allow Harvey Eder to speak again?
Mr. Chair, he had the opportunity to speak on the item. He was talking about something else. And when pressed to speak on item 28, he said, I think something to the effect of, what's that about? So I think we've complied with our legal obligations.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second?
I'll move the item.
Would the clerk?
I'll second. We had a second as well. So there's a motion and a second on the floor for adoption of Rule 1179.
Call the roll.
Supervisor Barker,
Yes.
Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Yes.
Councilmember Cacchiotti,
Yes.
Senator Delgado,
Yes.
Board Member Krakoff,
Yes.
Mayor McCallan,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Benoit,
Yes.
and Chairman Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 13-0.
And Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, I wanted to emphasize a point that the Vice Chair was making. On the calendar, which is our standard language, it says, quote, speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes for the entirety of the consent calendar plus board calendar. So again, we complied with that as well.
Yes, and I remember hearing that at the beginning of the meeting.
All right.
We have item number 29.
Yeah.
We're going to waive the presentation on that.
Let's have the presentation.
It'll be fairly short, Dr. Burke.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. My name is Tracy Goss. I'm a planning and rules manager. And I'll give you a brief presentation on our AB 2588 annual report for 2019. Next slide, please. AB 2588 is a public right to know program. It's part of the AB 2588 Hotspots program implemented under state law. The South Coast AQMD implements AB 2588 through its Rule 1402. Next slide. The goals and objectives of AB 2588 are shown here: to collect data, identify facilities, examine the potential risks, and then based on those risks, do a public notification program or notification meeting, and then with the main objective to reduce risk below significant levels. Next slide. There are a number of components to the South Coast AQMD air toxics program. Those are listed here. Of course, there's air toxic rules that we have. We have our AB 2588 program monitoring. We work with facilities. We also have an extensive compliance program. And more importantly, we also have the ability for people to file complaints through our 1-800-CUT-SMOG. Next slide, please. We do have a traditional process for the facilities that come into the AB 2588 program. They do report on 177 different air toxic compounds. This year in 2019, received 68 quadrennial reports. We calculate priority scores for those to further examine the potential health risk. We had 32 scores that we needed to audit. We did have 24 notifications to submit ATIRs. And then we also had HRAs completed, and we had 3 facilities required to submit risk reduction plans after holding a public notification meeting. Next slide. We do have 3 approaches for evaluating risk under AB 2588 and Rule 1402. One is the traditional approach, which I just described. We also have a voluntary risk reduction program for facilities that have previously approved HRAs. And then we also have a program to identify potentially high-risk facilities if their cancer risks are greater than 100 in a million. Next slide. Here's a review of the accomplishments for this year. We had 3 priority scores that we needed to revise. We had 68 quadrennial reports, 31 air toxic inventory reports, 10 health risk assessments that were processed, resulting in 3 emission reduction plans. We did have 5 voluntary risk reduction plans approved. We did have 1 potentially a high-risk facility health risk assessment approved, and also 2 risk reduction plans. Next slide, please. We do have other key activities that occurred in 2019. We had rulemaking for Rule 1407 and Rule 1480 for monitoring. We also continue our special monitoring program in Paramount. We also have been doing it within the greater Los Angeles area, and recently, over the last year or so, in the West Rancho Dominguez area. We also had air dispersion modeling that was reviewed for facilities that are subject to Rule 1420.2 and Rule 1466. Next slide. We do have upcoming activities that are going on in 2020. I would like to point out we do have 130 facilities that are filing quadrennial emission reports in 2020. We've received those, and we're in the process of doing their initial priority scores. We are tracking additional efforts that are going on through OEHA and approval of risk values for the scientific review panel. In fact, we just received today approved risk values for cobalt. We are working with CARB through CAPCOA Toxics and Risk Managers Committee, TARMAC, regarding upcoming proposals, or actually proposals that the public comment period started today for updates to the AB 2588 guidelines and list of compounds and the criterion toxics reporting guidelines that were adopted by the CARB board in 2019. And we'll continue to work with CARB board and CAPCOA on many of these efforts. Next slide, please. We do have also before you today for your approval updates to the guidelines that we use for AB 2588 for prioritization procedures, public notification, and then also for our supplemental guidelines. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, the proposal before you today is to receive and file this 2019 annual report and then approve the updates to the 3 guidance documents that I just mentioned. With that, we'll be able to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any questions on this report? Hearing none, we will receive and file it. We will now go to
Dr. Burke.
Yes.
Dr. Burke, is actually a public hearing, and there is a couple of action items, and we do have 3 public commenters on this item as well.
Okay, we have a couple public comments on this item.
Yes, as well as there is some action items attached to this.
Huh?
I do believe there are some action items. Or getting?
That's correct.
Yes.
The 3 action items.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead and take the public comment. First up is Harvey Etter. Harvey, on item 29, please.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yep, go ahead.
Hello? Okay, hello, I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the 80-90% of the people that want to see an equitable and just immediate total solar transition to meet our existential issues in climate, incorporating by reference all my comments before and to whatever agencies. And as per Dr. Burke's recommendation, all comments are copyrighted. All right, past and present. Benzene, okay. 617 Communities, the guy, they're a member of the board in East LA, brought up benzene. He lives near oil facilities, and there was in 27 the stuff about the different monitors, in 17 about the monitors in September. There was a benzene report that said there was a 30 to 40 deaths per 100,000. That's 3 to 4 per million. Okay, it's over 100. That's your threshold for plants and whatnot. Okay, it's ignored. The body counts that go along with PM that they emit to 7,500 for the state and 4,400 for the district. Now we got fires. The head of UCLA, that research Bones, it's on cardboard, said 1 to 3,000 deaths this month, last month. Okay, that's reoccurring. We're in the head of the fire season. It's going to go on for who knows ever. That's it. It at least equals all the other pollution deaths at 9 million per. Okay, the big picture. This is a virus. This is pandemic. It's the same thing. It's from bats to it went to camels, etc. in the Middle East. And okay, all right. It's the same thing like the in the trees killing the fires. Okay, climate. It is climate, and that's what's going on. Okay, also incorporating this physicist that died, that was paralyzed, and said the two threats to humanity are nuclear war and climate. And as climate becomes worse, as we just saw this month, damn climate Armageddon, to quote our governor, that we've got to deal with it, and that increases the risk. That has to be put into this as well for 2718, and it is toxic, and it aggravates other interactions in chemistry and whatnot and physics, and that's the way the world is, and this is not adequate at all. And there's other things, like I didn't make the comment about public works. So it all has to be solar, and it can do this renewable natural gas that's poisoning people, vectors, antibiotics, stuff through the 70% of human antibiotics go for feedlots, and this is the same kind of garbage we're getting from Pickens and the fracking industry, and it's dead, and there's big structural problems here, and you're totally ignoring it. And by relegating us to the 1-3-5 minutes, we're asking for you to back us in getting our information from the Environmental Protection Agency that will not give us that we asked for in September of last year. and to have all the cities and counties in the district and CARB also ask in that request. Because we are getting.
Thank you, Mr. Fetter.
Your testimony.
Our next speaker is Ranji George.
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. My name is Ranji George. Good afternoon, board members. This is in reference to a cobalt remark I understand that Mr. Goss had mentioned. As you know, you may know, I was a staff member at AQMD in the late 89 and 90 framework. In that framework, we were the ones who identified battery technologies as the great technologies that can solve our air quality problems. And I was the lead scientist leading the fight. In fact, it's the technical literature. We accumulated 7 boxes of technical literature, and with that ammunition, we approached ARB, conducted workshops. ARB was totally resistant, but we prevailed, and we had the ZEM mandate. So I was a pain in the neck for the established then, as I am pain in the neck for you. Sorry, guys, but we did it, and I'm very grateful for the ZEM mandate. Having said that, the current technology, lithium oxide, which we had identified in '89, has this cobalt content in a large amount. That makes the performance very good. The cycle, there are a lot of good things about cobalt, but unfortunately, it is a very toxic substance. And the most batteries right now has a fair amount of cobalt in it in the cathode side. Tesla, to their credit, just recently said they are going to move away from cobalt. That's a good sign. We don't know how long it will take, but they are going towards nickel, whereas nickel also has health concerns. But we need your leadership to recommend to all battery manufacturers, especially school bus and all other paper batteries, to get away from cobalt and get to a much more environmentally friendly chemicals and substances. So I urge you, Tesla has sounded the alarm, implicitly acknowledged the alarm of cobalt. In the same way, I hope other manufacturers will do that, and I hope the agency will provide that leadership. Thank you. That finished my comment.
Thank you for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you, Ranji. I was watching that announcement, and I was thinking of you when that was coming from Tesla last week. So thank you. Our next speaker is David Rothbard.
Good afternoon. This is David Rothbard. I'm representing the Southern California Alliance of Publicly Owned Treatment Works, and wanted to highlight something Tracy said pertaining to what CARB is going to approve, or at least are scheduled to approve, amendments to the 2588 program and CTR on November 19th. And the concern I have, and hopefully you should have as well, is the expansion of these requirements are saying to report up to 1,500 new toxics as a public right to know, and that's fine, that's a good thing. The concern we have as facilities and essential public services like I represent is most of these compounds do not have laboratory methods. There's no way to test for them, but yet we're being told to estimate emissions of these potential toxics. And this is akin to yelling fire in a crowded theater. From my point of view, I don't want to go to my neighbors and alarm them when I don't know if these things are really correct or not, if they're really there. So we're trying to talk to CARB staff and make sure whatever they implement makes sense and doesn't alarm the communities. But as far as staffing, this is a lot of work for your staff. And I just want to highlight that this is something to keep an eye on. And I encourage the board to provide feedback to CARB to make sure whatever's implemented makes sense and serves the community rather than alarming them. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the last item, Dr. Burke, and the last speaker, excuse me, and I'll go ahead and move the item.
Second.
Would you clerk call the roll?
Supervisor Barger,
Yes, and can I be recorded as a yes on 27? I literally walked out of the room, but I was here for the hearing.
okay, sure. Thank you. Supervisor Bartlett,
Yes.
Councilmember Buscaino. Councilmember Buscaino,
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Cacciati,
Yes.
Senator Delgado,
Yes.
Board Member Krakow,
Yes.
Mayor McCowen,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Supervisor Rutherford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Benoit,
Yes.
and Chairman Burke.
Yes,
Motion passes 13-0.
great. Thank you. Okay, Ben, do we have any in the public comment queue?
Yes, I
Dr.
have a few that are popping up now.
Dr. Burke,
Yes, Mr. McCallum.
if I might, since I was let on late, I wasn't able to make my opening comments. I'd like to make a comment if I might at this time.
Sure, surely.
Thank you. You know, Supervisor Barger and I serve on the Metrolink Board of Directors, and we want to let you know that not only is Metrolink a national leader in rail safety, but we are also leading the way among railroads in reducing air pollution. As you may recall, Metrolink was able to purchase 40 Tier 4 locomotives at a total cost of $280 million, with major funding by the district through the quorum warrior program. We currently have 37 Tier 4 locomotives operating in our fleet, with the final 3 scheduled to arrive in Southern California in November, and they will be put in service by the end of the year. This past month, we achieved a major milestone when, after emissions testing was successfully completed, CARB issued a verification certificate for Metrolink's Tier 4 locomotives. The testing and certification confirm that our Tier 4 locomotives continue to operate at enhanced, environmentally friendly levels, even after the units have been in service for an extended period. At the time of testing, the locomotive tested had logged more than 100,000 miles of service. As the first passenger railroad in the nation to invest in and successfully implement Tier 4 technology, Metrolink recognizes that the CARB verification is critical in affirming our commitment to accelerating a zero-emission future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's good to know. Okay, Ben.
Sure. Our first speaker is Ian Stewart. Ian?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you to the board members and the staff for your efforts to improve air quality. My name is Ian Stewart. I am president of Rail Propulsion Systems. I spoke with you last month concerning our all-electric locomotives. I want to give a special thanks to the AQMD technical staff for working with us to develop an updated schedule for our 1201 Simple Switcher project. And I'm happy to report that the project is currently on schedule, if not ahead of schedule. In addition, the RPS 999 battery locomotive switcher, which you saw the video of, has continued to run in active service in a region of non-attainment and will soon be featured in a new program on local PBS network KLCS called Sustaining US or Sustaining Us. It is important to note that for the 2 zero emissions locomotives mentioned above, RPS has received less than 10% of project funding, 200,000 out of more than 2 million for our 1201 locomotive project, and no funding for the 999 locomotive. RPS has been supporting these projects with private and internal funding thus far, but needs ARB and AQMD's support and funding to continue our efforts. I'm speaking to you today to highlight the fact that to date, such proposal efforts have been in vain due to the gaps in guidelines for funding for programs such as AB 617 and Carl Moyer. These gaps result in exclusion of ultra-low emissions and zero emissions technologies from funding. RPS projects and products have had support from the technical team at AQMD over the past 5 years, but due to the guidelines that omit allowances provided in the program legislation, there have been no way for AQMD to commit funding to these programs, even though the technical staff has approved of them. Despite this risk, we at RPS are working directly with Naveen Berry to better understand the requirements to properly submit an unsolicited proposal for zero emission switcher locomotive demonstration. and the AQMD technical group, and to demonstrate to the AQMD technical group, and will be doing so later today. I request that the board and the representatives from AQMD and ARB address these gaps in the guidelines and omissions in the guidelines, in the funding guidelines relative to the legislation, or identify other funds to allow the support of demonstration of the first market-ready zero emissions locomotive in the world that is American-made with 50 to 80% reclaimed content, uses second life batteries, and directly supports and is supported by local California businesses. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Harvey Yetter?
Hello, am I being heard?
Yep, go ahead, Harvey.
Hey. Okay, hello, I'm Harvey Yetter. I'm speaking for myself and for PSPC, etc. Holmes, being played here. It's outrageous that y'all didn't say anything about the record-breaking temperatures this past month and the inferno, which was called out clearly by at least the Democrats, your party leader. Okay, it was 121 degrees in Woodland Hills. Only a couple of years ago it was 119 was the record. Now, a few years before that, 117. It's outrageous. What's going to happen in 10 years when it's 131? It was the world's record, 130 degrees at the same time in Death Valley. I've been all over the state. My family's been here more than 100 years. We used to go to Death Valley. We used to go to Palm Springs when it was over 100, and me and my cousin Craig, and then we'd drive to Indio for a date mall. Right here in River City, we got big problems, folks. And you all said nothing. The same way you purged me and ours. This is outrageous. It's outrageous. We got run out of the federal court, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They took our point person, died, and they're trying to put somebody else in there illegally. It's not going to stand. Will not stand. We tried to file we were there for an hour in the clerks in Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, and then the marshal came and said, you got to get out of here. You cannot file papers. We cannot petition the government and no list have a decision made against us. This is like no taxation without representation. Same thing. And what's he's threatening violence, straight up. You know, this is dangerous stuff. Again, and it was threatened against me under color of authority by the marshal and the FBI. And threat of imprisonment for trying to file papers. They said there was no restraining order, the clerk told me. I tried to file writ of mandamus and a stipulation with y'all and stay of proceedings. Nothing. Nothing. I tried to get a copy of what we submitted from a year ago, and we were purged. No, we'll send you what you got back. We will not put it on the record, but we will not let you pay for a copy and send it to you. Not to measure what's happened in the last year. We're incorporating by reference everything ever said to any agency, staff, etc. Look, this is existential, man. People know it. The virus, this stuff, this drug-resistant antibiotics, this stuff with your renewable natural gas is garbage, and it just says nothing about PM and benzene and this other stuff that's.
Thank you, Mr. Etter. Our next speaker, Mallory.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, and good morning. My name is Mallory. I'm a student from Long Beach, and I'm here today to express my full support and urge the Air District Board to please support a rule to regulate pollution from indirect sources. The warehouse indirect source rule has been pushed back and delayed for far too long. Even though my communities and communities all over Long Beach and the South Coast feel the effects of the goods movement, especially truck traffic and port emissions all of the time, even through COVID-19. I'm extremely conscious and concerned about the climate crisis as a young person, but what really worries me and angers me and what I care about is the fact that these environmental impacts are happening right now, and they're impacting marginalized communities extremely unequally. this terrible air quality, these health issues, all of these things we've been hearing about, it's going on right now, and the impacts are vastly disproportionate. Being from Long Beach, I can see these inequalities so clearly. West Long Beach directly borders the Port of Long Beach in LA, which thousands of ships stop at every year and immensely impact the nearby air and water quality. West and North Long Beach also directly border the 710 freeway, which hundreds of trucks use every day to carry the goods from the port and release toxic diesel pollution into the community. West and North Long Beach, as well as many of the communities bordering these polluters, are predominantly communities of color. So the burden of this terrible air quality and the resulting health impacts it causes are bared by these communities at an extremely disproportionate rate. This is an environmental justice issue. This is a civil rights issue. This summer, we had over 70 bad air days for smog in the South Coast region. While I know we're in the midst of a global pandemic, I think now more than ever, we can see how interconnected all of our systems are, from public health to infrastructure to the environment and the air we breathe. The Air District is not doing enough to clarify the final rule. The timing of this rule has been delayed several times in front of the full board, and the South Coast communities cannot afford to keep waiting. A strong indirect source rule must be passed. The board has an opportunity to pass this rule and support the communities it serves, sooner, not later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa. Ron, can we unmute Lisa?
Lisa has an older version of Zoom, so she'll need to upgrade.
So Lisa, you need to disconnect and upgrade and try and come back in, raise your hand again, or if you want to call in, the call-in numbers are provided on the website as well or on the agenda. We'll go ahead and go on to Yasi. Yasi?
Hi there again. Sorry, I was drinking some water. This is Yasi again with the Sierra Club's My Generation campaign. Since the month of May, we've had over 80 smog air days in the region, and this is with people staying at home during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, in the Inland Empire, we're seeing a proliferation of business as usual, continuing the perpetuation of poverty in our communities where false promises of prosperity from warehouse and rail yard jobs fuel chronic health grievances of our people, unemployment, asthma attacks, cancer, COVID-19, and death. Take a community like Colton, who has 3 old dirty gas peaker plants, 2 of which have been approved for a re-permitting from the Air District. Although they've had violations in their activity, at the same time, Colton is facing an untransparent proposal to build a rail yard close to the size of the San Bernardino rail yard to allegedly accommodate the high-speed rail project. This project is being proposed right across from Colton High School, 6 other schools, and hundreds of homes nearby the 10 freeway. Although the evidence for such a need has not been proven sufficient, and we see BNSF and the High-Speed Rail Authority agreeing to use Colton as a profit backdrop, we look to your board and staff to support the community's efforts on stopping the illogical plans for this project. The fact that our Black and Brown communities constantly have to play defense in rulemaking and public policy shows that the fossil fuel and goods movement industry and public policy standards need to change from routine to progress. We worked years on advocating for a rule to regulate pollution on indirect sources and successfully did that with this board's leadership. We can achieve the implementation of such a rule for safer working conditions, community benefits, and a market signal for trainable and growing jobs in the zero emission sector. This rule is just a piece in the broader puzzle to achieve cleaner air. Look at CARB just passing the advanced clean truck rule, and CARB will also be looking at cleaning up fleet rules soon. Staff is working tirelessly on the warehouse rule, but it continues to be delayed. It's clear that we cannot keep emitting NOx into the atmosphere from diesel and gas. The summers will only be getting hotter and California will continue to burn. Please support such a rule. It's a crucial piece to reach attainment. During this pandemic, I've been staying inspired by leaders in the civil rights movement. And I like to end a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from his essays on A Testament to Hope. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him right. I encourage you to do what's right. I wish you all a good October, and we will continue to advocate for a healed environment together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ranji George, Ranji?
Yes, as one of my name is Ranji George. I worked with the school bus program and before that with battery and fuel cell technology. One of the speakers mentioned about lack of funding for the zero emission locomotive. Carl Moyer has one of the biggest programs, incentive programs in the state, and they are pouring hundreds of millions, and they are based on rules that were taken 10, 20 years ago. It really needs updating and redefining because it's very difficult for zero emission technologies to compete. So I would encourage the board and the staff to lobby, legislate your contacts to get 40% of the Carl Moyer funding for zero emission technology. And please carve it out 20% for batteries and 20% for fuel cell technologies, because last 20 years fuel cell technology, as I've been mentioning, has not got its fair share, only 10% of all funding. So I urge you to update these Carl Moyer guidelines, so allowing more penetration of battery and fuel cell technologies, at least 20%. Then I want to thank Supervisor Benoit for listening into Tesla announcements. They also mentioned Tesla to their great credit, actually. They will look into the battery recycling. They will take control of all the batteries that they have, put forward in the market, and they will be in charge of battery, not a third party, which is my biggest fear. The third party sources will send it to Mexico, to send it to other EJ communities. So they are doing the right stuff. So if battery follow good stewardship, yes, let's go forward with it. So I'm urging you, please change the Carl Moyer guidelines. It takes effort, but I hope you can start it now. There's a lot of funding there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Amy Francis.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. So first, I wanted to say thank you for enthusiastically passing the AB 617, and thanks to everybody who commented. It was really inspiring. And then I just wanted to introduce myself. I am the parent of a young child, and we live in Los Angeles. And as you know, we recently had the worst smog in 30 years, which is quite shameful. And I'm here today really as part of the NELA Climate Collective, and also inspired by the Sierra Club to talk about the rule to regulate pollution from indirect sources. I know some other people spoke on this as well. But I think, we really need to do everything we can to improve our air quality. And because this has been pushed back and delayed for months, I think we want to step in and say, let's take a look at this. Let's do everything we can. We're experiencing the air quality impacts of the truck traffic, the warehouse operations, especially now that everybody's ordering their things online. We have so much trucking coming to and from, and I'm seeing personally the results of this these emissions in my own community. Also wildfire, of course, impacts as well. But as a result, my child, he has to stay indoors. He can't go outside and play on these air quality days. We're worried about him developing asthma. And this isn't just some random concern. He's experienced some breathing difficulties in the past, and our doctors basically said, if he comes in one more time, then we diagnose him with asthma. And so I'm very concerned about this. And so, this is just one other way that we need to tackle the problem of our air quality. And so I ask that you do the right thing, pass the indirect sourcing rule sooner rather than later, because we cannot afford to keep waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Elliot Gonzalez. Elliot?
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go right ahead.
So yeah, I think some of the previous speakers, spoke much more eloquently than what I am going to say. So I just want to echo a lot of what I heard from the other student in Long Beach, which is where I live. I'm with an organization, Stop Fracking Long Beach. And I just wanted to ask that you not only adopt a indirect source rule, but that this board begin to no longer consider natural gas a clean energy source. As we all know, it comes from very toxic sources like fracking and other controversial methods. We know it does require a lot of water, which is becoming increasingly scarce, fresh water, to produce this natural gas, and that it's oil. It's the oil and gas industry. It's the people who got us in this mess, the people who made a fortune while other people have suffered from cancer, asthma, heart disease, and now all of us will suffer from global warming because of their extraction and their method of obtaining dirty energy. Here in Long Beach, we have been using natural gas as part of our so-called clean truck program. And what we have noticed is that natural gas, when you take a methane camera, which us poor people cannot afford, but luckily a couple of wealthy donors have come down with a methane camera, we can see that there is emissions all over West Long Beach, all over Wilmington, because natural gas, which is a byproduct of oil production, is fuming all over the city. So that's what's going to happen if we continue to treat natural gas as if it's equal to energy, to electricity. It's not. It is a fossil fuel, just like oil, and it is produced by the oil and gas industry. So I just wanted to ask for your consideration of that, and ask that you support the indirect source rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Phil Baraka. Phil?
Yes, thank you. Hi, good morning, Chairman Burke and governing board members of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. My name is Phil Baraka. I'm a program supervisor in the Technology Demonstration Group and a 33-year employee of this agency. I am here to speak on the pension actions and impacts that the SB-SARA board has brought to the employees of this agency since the start of 2019. In February of 2019, SB-SARA announced that they would retroactively apply the pension reform decisions of the California Supreme Court on employees hired prior to 2006, causing them first of all stress and premature retirements in this agency. The California Supreme Court released its 93-page decision on July 30th, 2020. The final sentence of that decision by the Chief Justice remands the decisions of the Supreme Court to the lower courts to vacate the judgments of the Supreme Court. Many of us believe that SB-SARA is acting prematurely and is elected to act with haste and uncertainty as to what and when the decisions of the Supreme Court are to be. This is exemplified by SB-SARA's action that followed 1 week from the Supreme Court decision. On August 6th, on a 5-3 vote, they excluded one pensionable item that changed the date of effectiveness of exclusion from 2006 to July of 2020. So this agency lost many employees between 2019 and the summer of 2020 that could have otherwise continued to contribute to this agency. Last week, we were notified by HR that SB-SARA is considering a second pension exclusion that will affect employees hired prior to January of 2013. This is going to affect nearly 50% of the employees in this agency, creating more stress and more uncertainty in the workforce of whether to stay or to go. It appears that management has been made aware of many more employees planning to retire or leave sooner than planned. SB-SARA has been explicit in the responses that they are restricted to act within the law, and I would ask where in the California Supreme Court decision authority is afforded the retirement boards to make decisions on what is pensionable, non-pensionable, and enacted on by what date. Is that not what the lower courts are supposed to determine? The South Coast recognizes the need for certainty for businesses to know how to plan and budget. Why should your employees expect or demand less? In the final analysis, the legacy employees of this agency are your most valuable asset to advance the mission and message of this agency. These employees should not be treated in the manner in which this entire matter has taken place. We have done what was asked of us and in accordance with all pension obligations for over 20 years. So my ask of you all is to please work with us to resolve these matters and provide better communication with staff so we can make informed decisions on employment and retirement Currently, we are all being left to seek our own answers and legal actions and feel we are not getting the support that we believe we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Lisa, sorry, Marosa? Lisa? This is our last speaker, Mr. Burke.
Lisa, again, has a version of Zoom that's not updated. I can promote to a panelist if you, but it's better.
Yeah,
that
we'll go ahead and try that real quick and see if that'll work. Lisa, can you unmute now?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm using my own laptop, which I tried to upgrade, but apparently it's not did correctly. I'm Lisa Mirasola. I'm program supervisor at South Coast AQMD. Good afternoon, governing board members. I've been an employee for over 32 years, and I'm more comfortable presenting technical information with the help of PowerPoint slides, but I decided to speak today because if I don't speak, you won't know that this issue is important to me. And I agree with many of the previous comments. So the recent California Supreme Court decision directed the lower court to implement their decisions about retirement compensation. And I believe that San Bernardino County Employee Retirement Association is being hasty in their actions. Employee representatives have negotiated compensation and sometimes reduced focus on wages to gain other benefits without understanding the potential impact years into the future. I understand that SB Sarah is determining the pay codes that they believe should not be included in retirement compensation and plans to direct those funds back to employers for current employees. South Coast AQMD has been paying into SB Sarah retirement system on our behalf. How is this spiking? This is not what we agreed to. How will South Coast AQMD implement these changes? In spite of management's attempts to inform staff, I want to amplify Jill Wynot's description of the apprehension among staff worrying about how many more shoes are going to drop. Please demonstrate that you value us by finding a way to honor our agreement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for trying again. That concludes our public comment, Dr. Burke. Oh, Dr. Burke, you're still on mute. There you go.
Okay. I'm better on mute than any other place. I'd like to thank you for helping me through the public testimony. That concludes, unless someone has some board travel that they would like to bring up.
I'd like to have some travel.
Yeah, but you're going to Cabo. Don't worry about it. You shouldn't have told me that.
Yeah,
So,
I missed the Belgium trip. I don't know, Mr. Cacciati, did you get that invite?
I didn't get it.
Okay.
There's a reason for all that. So, Mr. Gilchrist, do we have to leave this room for closed session, or can Ron take everybody else out?
Yes, we need to leave and reconvene elsewhere.
Can somebody please send me the information on how to get to the other room?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do that.
And so we should adjourn this meeting?
Yeah, I'd also like to request that info, please. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll have received it from Faye Thomas, but I'll send it again to you, Dr. Burke, and to you, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Is there anyone else who needs?
I'm sorry, who else?
And
Supervisor?
Bartlett too.
Okey doke.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? I'm adjourning. No, I should not adjourn this until after closed session is over. Okay? Okay. I'll see everybody in closed session.
It is necessary for the board to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 54956.9 sub A and 54956.9 sub D sub 1 to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally and to which the SCA AQMD is a party. The actions are People of the State of California, ex-rel SC AQMD v. Exide Technologies, Los Angeles Superior Court Case Number BC 533528. Enri Exide Technologies, U.S. Bankruptcy Court, District of Delaware, Case Number 1311482, KJC, Bankruptcy Case, Delaware District Court Case Number 19-00891, Appellate Case, United States Court of Appeals, Third Circuit, Case Number 20-1858, and Enri Exide Holdings, U.S. Bankruptcy Court, District of Delaware, Case Number 20-11157, CSS, Bankruptcy Case.
Hi, Bay.
Ready?
Ready.
How many years do I have?
There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
So I have.
Thanks, Bay.
20 years.
Okay. But all in the state of California.